Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit. I'm really thrilled to kick off today's conversations with our first panel, L&D Planning for Future Workforce Capabilities. So this is one of those topics that sits at the core of what we do as people and culture leaders, especially here at Hacking HR, not just keeping pace with transformation, but designing the kind of learning and leadership cultures that keep us one step ahead of it as well. So we're joined today by an incredible group of experts who are shaping the future of learning, capability building, and workforce strategy in real time. So please join me in welcoming Petronia Omundo from GLDM, Stacy Proctor, CPO, People Partner, and HR Advisor, Krista Vaught, Principal Advisor, Employee Experience and Learning and Development is her field, and Olaju Moke Akindolire, People and Culture Manager. And I'm Vanessa Anello, Director of Program Strategy and Growth at Hacking HR, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. So over the next half hour or 40 minutes, we'll explore how organizations can anticipate the skills that they will need before gaps appear, balance AI with human collaboration, and also build agile learning systems that evolve as fast as businesses do. So let's jump right in. To start, I want to ground us in a simple but powerful truth. The future workforce isn't just being trained, it's being designed. And that design starts with foresight and curiosity and the courage to think differently about how we build capability. So let's begin by talking about how organizations can anticipate what's coming before it arrives. So this first question goes to you, to Petronia. So Petronia, let's start with you. How can organizations anticipate the future skills their workforce will need before the gaps appear?
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Nice to be here. Nice to be here with this beautiful panel. As Vanessa said, my name is Petronilla, and I head learning and development in a hotel in Nairobi, in Kenya, in Africa. Yeah, where our vision is to become the preferred hospitality company in the ownership and management of hotels and key resorts in the key markets of Africa. So, how can L&D get skills before skills actually are needed? One thing I talk about or think about is having scenario planning. A very simple thing, but can be very big in helping in shaping the phase of L&D, and asking questions like what if, how will the future look like? And when you ask those questions, then we plan, we work backwards. I love saying, let's work backwards. So, what do you think the future will look like? And how does work look like? How does the organizations look like? What are we seeing? Are we having gig employees? Are we having, what type of workforce are we having now? Then you work backwards to build the employees who can fit in both all roles across the organization. That is one. Another thing I think about is look at trends. What are the trends that we have? What trends do we have now? What trends are shaping the future? What trends are we seeing? So in our reading, when you read,
Uh-oh. So it seems like we have lost Petronilla, and I need to correct myself on saying her name. So forgive me when she comes back. I will ask forgiveness. But so this will be a follow-up question to that, and of course to her answer that she was giving at the same time. But this will be to the group in general. If you feel like you have the answer for this, please feel free to chime in. But what signals or data points should HR and L&D leaders be paying attention to right now? Whether that's technology trends or market shifts or just workforce behavior patterns. Maybe we can start with you, Krista.
Sure. And I was actually going to start by adding on to the previous response where I think she might have been going, maybe, but I'm not sure. So we know that a lot of organizations are investing in different skills mapping tools, which is great because skills mapping is definitely partly a data problem. And I think it's also partly a listening problem. So it's not just about hard skills, but also about capability flow. So where are people blocked or over adapting without any support? I think we're looking to some external reports and overall trends, and also listening to employees within the organization can reveal a lot. They can actually help us to anticipate some of those future skills as well based on what they're seeing. So you can learn a lot by asking people within your organization too.
Thank you so much, Krista, for stepping in here. And thank you, Petronilla, for coming back and joining us. I'm so sorry. It must have
I'm
been
sorry about
a
that.
technical
Yeah.
issue. But I didn't want to bulldoze, excuse me, past right what you were saying. If you wanted to jump back in with your answer.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much, Vanessa. Sorry about that. What was I saying? I said looking at trends. What are the trends in the world of work right now? Reading articles and reading magazines and looking at all these reports that come in from LinkedIn talking about the future trends of work and the future workforce. What do you see from Gallup? What do you see from even Gartner? What are we seeing? So on seeing the trends, analyze what you're reading and work backwards. I tend to think that working backwards is a good thing to do. Then it helps you to plan as well before you get there. And of course, the very good old thing that all of us do in various roles is having good discussions with your C-suite. So continuous collaboration is very important, and sitting with the business to ask the questions: what is it that you want to see? What are you looking for? What are we lacking? Just the discussions from their minds helps you also plan backwards and build your workforce for the future even before you do your skills gap analysis. That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. So, can you expand a little bit on this idea of working backwards? So,
Yeah.
we're talking about reverse engineering for the planning.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Working backwards. So for example, a thing I like doing is going through Gallup reports. So if you look at Gallup reports, for example, or even Gartner reports, or even LinkedIn reports, when you read and look at the future of work by 2030, work will be like this, you know? So when you see that, what do you do with that information? Do you sit on it, or do you start preparing yourself in advance? So yes, you have a look at it and start looking at what do I need to do to make sure that my workforce is going to be aligned with that 2030 that we are looking at, 2030 vision that you're looking at. So start planning and work backwards to align yourself to the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Petronilla.
Yeah.
And so we have this idea from Petronilla about working backwards, right? And we have Krista's answer here as well for the skills mapping. What would you say, Stacey? What signals or data points should HR and L&D be paying attention to right now?
Yes, I think that we're right on track with how we're thinking about this. I think about working backwards as well. I really, from a skill set perspective, there are two buckets that I think about. One is AI fluency. All employees need to have some kind of AI fluency. These are the technical skills to be successful. So we need to align our organizations around what tools and why. We need to be very specific about how we're asking employees to use them. So I use the example of super prompting that requires 2 statements in every single prompt. For example, before you begin, what assumptions have you made? And before you begin, what clarifications do you need? And I use this all the time with AI, and it's super helpful to create better context for what it is we're trying to pull from AI. The second big bucket outside of the technical skills are what we call either HI, human intelligence, or since that term is being challenged, I'm starting to call it human wisdom. And that is really to ensure that AI is augmenting the work and actually improving the workflows. So these are things like judgment, to know how to appropriately prompt and how to engage with AI, for example. Critical thinking skills to discern context from content, right? To be able to audit, to determine what work to actually automate that frees employees up to improve the customer outcomes. Resilience, right? To continually learn. Patience, right? To program and train AI to actually be helpful. Ethics, of course, and the governance. We have we have a policy. What are the reasons for that? Why am I now a supporter of that in my job? Curiosity, agility, and then that institutional knowledge that our employees have. I totally agree with what has been shared so far, that we need to take care with our employees to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity of the knowledge that they have. We need to ask them, what tools are you using, and what do you think we could do to improve our customer outcomes? What do we need to automate, and what do we need to keep as a human connection or improve our human connections?
No, yeah, I definitely see across these answers a few themes forming. So, we have the skills forecasting piece and scenario planning, listening, right, across functions. Speaking to Stacey's answer specifically, Olujumoke, can you expand on what you think some data points are that we should be listening out for right now?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, awesome. Everyone has said a lot. Petronilla did set the pace for this particular conversation, so thank you for laying such a good foundation. I think to add to what everyone else has said, we need to also consider the business environment, because that's something that we sometimes skip. These surveys take place in controlled environments, but we all know that the politics of it, the economics of it, can upturn an entire industry. So it's important to have business acumen, understand what's going on in your business environment, and how politics, policies, foreign policy will affect your business operations going forward. And that will speak to what skills will be relevant to you in the future. However, we live in the future of work. What we thought was the future of work is now the now of work. And so let's also focus on skills that will transcend trends. skills like critical thinking, analytical thinking, learning agility for your workforce. And I like what Stacy said. I think I hope that I did mention your name correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. Yes, okay. So Stacy, I like what Stacy said about AI fluency. It's important. Prompt engineering, conversations with AI agents within the workforce. How do we interact? How do we set boundaries? And of course, the ethics of the use of AI. So skills that will transcend trends are also super important for us to focus on. And those data points will come from our business environment, our political environment, our economic environment. And I'd like to just round up with saying that, skills are very important. So we plan skills the same way we plan financial budget, right? When you're putting together your budget, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about inflation. You're thinking about business strategy. You're thinking about what will happen in the next 12 months, what will happen in the next 13, 26 months, 36 months, and so forth. So we plan skills the same way we plan financial budgets. We need to be proactive. We need to do annual reviews, and it's also tied to business strategy. So super important that we bear these things in mind as we plan. Thank you.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Anticipating, not by guessing, but by building the systems that listen to the business in real time as well. So I really love all of these answers. Turning learning and engagement data into insight loops as well. And just reminding ourselves that it's not just measurement, it's foresight that we have into the business and to our employees as well. So I think I'll start with Stacy for this one. Stacy, we talk a lot about AI readiness, right? And you did bring it up with your last answer, but not always about what it means to collaborate with AI. What skill sets do employees need to work effectively alongside AI systems?
Well, I'll go back to what's being mentioned about working backwards, right? The way that I am advising companies is to really think about what is it that our purpose is. What is the purpose of our company? Who are we serving, right? And how do we want to improve that service to those customers, clients, patients, whomever it is? And so then we work backwards from there. Okay, so if we could improve those outcomes, we would want what additional human connection to make that happen. So then we reverse it back to think about what workflows should be automated to allow for more human connection to improve those outcomes. And then we can automate what should be augmenting or helping employees versus what just can be automated, because there's a million things that can be automated, but actually should they be? And so from a training perspective and from a articulation of how do we help employees understand what that is, we need to sit with them, probably mostly cross-functionally, to talk about workflows and to help them articulate what it is that they can contribute from a human perspective and what really needs or should be automated. Is that helpful?
Yeah, definitely. And does anybody else want to jump in here on Stacy's answer? I think another thing that is just as important is how we teach employees to elevate their human intelligence to improve outcomes for the people they serve, whether that's customers, patients, or clients. Do we have anyone here who feels strongly that they can expand on this topic here on human intelligence?
Okay, just wanted to quickly jump in there. So I would put it in 3 buckets to say how can we collaborate effectively with AI. And so 3 buckets for me would be literacy. It is important to know what you're working with and how it works. We cannot overemphasize the need to understand how to use AI to enhance the human aspect of the work. The second part I'd say is also focus on the human differentiators, because there are aspects that you bring that is unique to you, your empathy, your sense of judgment, your institutional knowledge, your decision making, your ethical reasoning. Those are things that will set you apart even in the use of AI and when you're interacting with it. And you can always question and be like, no, that response Can we tweak? Can we look at this? And it keeps you at the cutting edge of things. And then the last aspect I'll also like to speak about will be workflow adaptability, ensuring that the technology in your space, ensuring that your process design, ensuring that you're able to even fail forward by experimenting and say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and be agile enough to pivot if you need to. So, and then the art of continuous learning, because again, learning agility is something that is super important in the age that we're in, where everything is happening at net breaking speed. And you know, we're all just trying to keep our head on the swivel while we get work done. So I think these three aspects, the AI literacy, human differentiators, and workflow adaptability, are three things that will help us collaborate effectively with AI.
Yeah.
I'd like to chime in as well.
Sure.
And just jumping in from what you said, also using what Minola likes using, the three-legged stool. Yeah. i.e. skill set, tool set, mindset. Very important, even as you talk about human intelligence. A lot of people keep talking about AI getting them out of the workplace, but that is because they are not, either they're not equipped with the skills they need. So yes, continuous learning. Leniola has talked a lot about making sure that there's agility, you know, in the learning environment. So equip the team a lot with the skills that they need, and tell them, shift the mindset. Mindset shift is going to be very important in this age and era, that AI is here to stay. But while it is here to stay, then what must you do? Shift your mindset and let AI work for you. Let AI help you to improve the workflows as well. So it's in the mindset shift, then equip the teams with the tools that they need to actually succeed and then become even the better person that they need to be. So again, the three-legged stool, skill set, mindset, and tool sets to ensure that you improve the human intelligence. Yeah.
I'm also such a huge fan of Manola's three-legged stool. But that's so good, because the real competitive edge isn't, who automates first, but who collaborates best between humans and machines. So thank you for mentioning that. Actually, I'd like to keep the spotlight on you, Petronilla, just a little bit longer. Have you seen examples of companies successfully balancing technical AI skills with those human capabilities?
Have I seen companies balancing? Yes, I have. I can talk a little bit about us and what we do in this area. So yes, as a head of learning and development, that's the one thing I do focus on, to make sure that people don't get scared of AI, but to embrace it and use it ethically, so that you don't ask Copilot for things and you copy and paste the way it is. That's not being smart as well. So yes, having the balance between using the tools, and as you use the tools, be smart enough to also use it correctly, and have all the governance tools behind it. Have a policy that is directing you on what should be done and how it should be done, and it then leads to people using things efficiently and having these systems being used even in a better way. Yeah, like Stacy asked, is that helpful?
It is. It is. So strong emphasis on human and AI partnerships here. So loving
Very,
that.
very, very important. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Even
so
to make work more efficient, because at the end of the day, what are we looking at? We're looking at efficiency and looking at being effective so that the customer is happy. That's the key reason why any organization really stays. Exists. So you have to have efficient workflows, and you have to be effective in what you do and be productive. Then you can offer value as you use the proper values that you've instilled in the employees and in the teams that you have. But that only comes with, again, working backwards, following the policies and what you've instilled and aligning with everything else. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to Krista, as AI reshapes how we work, what role do you see L&D playing in helping employees and leaders adapt, not just technically, but emotionally and culturally as well?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So I think L&D really becomes a human bridge in AI transformation, if you will. So there's a lot of research out there right now on AI in the workforce. Um, there was one stat that said something like 96% of C-suite leaders expect productivity gains from AI, but the employees in the organizations are not really sure how to actually leverage it. I think we're seeing that shift a good amount, but AI adoption, I see it as more of a human readiness challenge than a technical challenge. There are so many tools out there already for people to develop those AI skills. And so at Frontier Design, we're a human centered design consulting firm. We work with a lot of top tech companies too on AI red teaming, so helping them actually test out the model. So we've seen a lot of interesting things from that perspective as well. And we've learned that even the best AI tools, and this is true for any technology tool, not just AI, they can't deliver value if the workforce is not equipped and also ready to use it, not just technically correct, but also responsibly, creatively, and competently. And so that's where learning and development comes in. So we become that on ramp for safe and scalable AI deployment and use. And so that's just a snippet. There are some interesting reports out there that I was skimming through last night. So there's one that focuses on government. And so it's actually an organization called Apolitical. The report is Generative AI in Government, I think 2025. They found that 60% of public servants are already using Gen AI, but the barriers to actually implementing and creating some more impact are more cultural, not technical. So it's things like psychological safety, feeling like it's okay to be testing out AI and maybe failing sometimes and having that failure be accepted, and having clear policies. So I think AI's role is not just training, but it's more that translation. So helping people understand how their work is changing, how they can use AI in that, what is staying human versus what can be done by AI more effectively. And so, yeah, I think it's more the question of how do we change how we work? How can leaders lead differently, and having L&D own that shift instead of just thinking it as a technical training.
Yeah, I love how you brought up, the human readiness factor, especially because, I'm definitely one of those people who has a bit of the chasing the shiny object syndrome. So anytime that there's a new AI tool and I feel like it could be more productive for me or streamline something, I'm all over it. But that's kind of to the detriment of myself, right? Then you have to spend the time learning all of these different tools and things. So getting everybody on the same page as far as, okay, we might even be ready, but what does that look like? When we're rolling it out to our workforce. And then when you mentioned, 60% of public servants or service workers already using Gen AI, I thought that was really interesting because I recently read an article where, ChatGPT was offering their business enterprise plan to municipalities for $1 for the entire year. So I expect that number will increase very soon. Um, I do have a follow-up question for the group. How does L&D evolve from being a content provider to becoming a true change accelerator? And we can start with you, Stacey.
Sure. Our typical L&D is design and develop and then facilitate training, right? And classroom work that, probably has some breakout rooms, but it's really very, very content driven, to your point. And I think that it's incredibly important right now to create conversations, to really engage employees in what I call workshops, right? Come and bring yourself and your experience to this conversation. And where I've seen it more effective and really robust is cross-functionally. So being very specific about who works across processes, right? And all the different areas and all the different expertise. And let's have a conversation about what's happening, what doesn't happen, what should happen, what's your opinion, how do you think we could improve this? It is much more conversational right now, and we need to engage employees in this process, because if we don't, then fear misunderstanding, all of these other things happen that are counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. So we have to include, and we need to make sure that we are engaging employees in these conversations, even if their job is going to be eliminated. It is so much more effective to bring them into the conversation, train them on all the AI tools that we want to use at our company, so that they are more prepared for anything that's coming next, right? And that they can be part of redesigning whatever roles are happening at the company. We need their institutional knowledge to do that. And so it must be, to use the word, right, it has to be way more engaging than we have had in the past around just circling around content.
I really like that, especially your emphasis on the institutional knowledge, but also getting back to, in human resources, we are people-centered, or we try to be, right? And giving people that chance to pivot as well. Like you said, even if a job or a role will be eliminated, giving them the chance to see that far off in the future so that they can make some changes, right? How do you see this cultural shift playing out on the ground? And I'd like to start with you, Stacy, and then move down the line here.
It's like all change. There's bumps, and there's anxiety, and there's, uneasiness. And we resolve that through communication, right? The more we communicate with employees, the more open we are, the more engaged we are in having a conversation, answering questions, even if the answer is, I don't know what's happening with your job next year, but let's figure it out together. Let's figure out how we redesign this role so that it improves the customer outcome. Again, back to the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. And if we're constantly aligning people, so I think that all of the uneasiness that comes with change is exponential right now, because things are very uncertain, right? And they're uncertain in all kinds of ways, not just about work, right? So the world is uncertain right now in a lot of different ways. And employees are not immune to that. And we need to show up as human and have those workshops and those conversations and those discussions to at least provide as much information as possible, and to be listening, back to what you were saying, right? We need to listen to what they're saying so that it really can improve what's happening for the future for everyone, regardless of what happens with the jobs. We will all be better off if we all understand more and more about what's happening and how it's impacting us, the company, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. And that, forward looking out into the horizon. I love that answer, Stacey. And Olajumoke, one of the biggest challenges many organizations face is learning fatigue. Employees often see learning as extra work rather than growth. So how do we engage those learners and shift that mindset?
Okay, so this is the core of a good portion of the work that I've done with clients, and it's important to create a learning culture. And what is a learning culture? In simple terms, I would say learning culture is one where we ask why more than we say yes. So that way we are thinking, we are asking questions, we are trying to understand. And we also need, as L&D professionals, we need to redesign how we deliver learning, because we have a generation that is coming into the workforce we have them already in the workforce who are digital natives, but there are also those who grew up on bite-sized learning, who grew up on gamified learning, who grew up on these other methods of learning that we've not fully explored yet, experiential learning. And so while we want to align with business strategy, our delivery is what determines engagement levels. And so I like to use three things, 3 words to just explain things, because it kind of helps me as well. And so I would say, to make it look less like extra work and more like career development, we can use 3 things: make learning easier, make it relevant, and make it rewarding. Easier in terms of integrate learning into regular workflow. Beyond classrooms, we bring everybody together to a Zoom meeting and teach. Can we have micro learning opportunities? Can we have game-based learning and gamified learning? Those are two very different things, by the way. And just have like micro learning sessions for people. So instead of putting me in the classroom for 2 hours or 3 hours every month, can I have 10 minutes of analyzing a case study? Can I have a conversation, peer learning? Can we deliver learning in a way that is more interesting, more interactive, more engaging, integrating it into the workflow? That's number one. Number two, I would say, would be make it relevant. The principle of WIFM is universal. What's in it for me? How is it relevant to my job or my development within the organization? So I'm doing a great job now, but if I don't learn AI fluency in the next few years, my job may no longer exist. So how do I, just telling me that gives a sense of urgency to say, I need to improve my skills. I need to upskill. I need to learn more things. And so if I understand what's in it for me, I'm able to appropriate the correct weight to learning. And then also, we could also talk about make it rewarding. People who develop themselves, people who join company-wide trainings and learning plans and complete it should also be rewarded for it. It could be a simple recognition of learner of the month or learner of the quarter, or some sort of reward system where I know that once I have upskilled, gained these competencies, then I am eligible for some sort of career progression or career mobility within the organization. Or so make it relevant. So I'm saying make it easy, make it relevant, make it rewarding. And within our performance, one simple step we can take today would be, I've seen a lot of my clients in their performance appraisals, they have this question, what training did you attend? How is that relevant? Let's switch the question to what skills did you grow? And how did that change how you work? And that way they begin to see the relevance between what they learn in the classrooms and how it makes them more effective, eligible for mobility or rewards or whatever it is that your system allows within your organization. So I think these three things usually help convince people that learning and development is not extra work.
No, that's such a great point. And I think that I will definitely be stealing your shortcut there for 3 bite-sized micro learnings as well. Krista, this is a question for you. Do you think managers play a bigger role here than they realize in shaping how their teams view learning? And I know you had a bit more of an answer to expand on our last question as well.
Yeah, well, I know that a lot of people have this question around how do we shift from being order takers and pushing out content to something more strategic. I just wanted to quickly mention 2 books that I think have been really useful. So one is by Dr. Keith Keating, and the second is by Jess Almley. I put those in the LinkedIn chat if anyone's interested. And as to your question on managers, the answer is definitely yes. So I think that we can help to reframe managers as development multipliers instead of, often they're seen as bottlenecks, or employees can't attend the training because the manager is not bought in or whatever the reason is. So equipping managers with really easy to understand and access tools to support their employees. And I think a lot of that goes to supporting employees in career development generally, not just training specific skills. So what's underlying that is coaching. And I think most of us in this room know that a lot of managers haven't had much, if any, training in how to coach their employees, not just on performance, but also on their own development, both professionally and within their career. So that could look like creating some peer coaching labs for supervisors, which I did at a previous organization, because a lot of this isn't about a knowledge gap. It's confidence in actually building those skills. People have access to so many different materials and resources already. You can go and read a book on coaching today, take a course, whatever it is, but you have to actually practice the skills to build them. So finding ways to help managers develop coaching skills specifically, I think, is one of the most impactful things we can do.
Thank you, Krista. And in light of time, I think we only have a few minutes left. So I'd love to open up a lightning round on this final question here. And this will start with you, Stacy, and then we will go down the line here. But what's one action HR leaders should take in 2026 to make their workforce truly future ready?
Communication on overload. over communicate everything, and really create the positivity around all the things that are possible for employees and for the organization.
Thank you, Stacy. And Olajumoke?
I would say in this case, it's not three things. It's going to be one action, two things. Review how you approach skills. Skills are very important. And so it's not a last minute thing you do at the end of the year so that we can have a learning plan for the next year. It's you need to review, you need to research, and two actions. If there are any two trainings or learning plans that you need to include in 2026, it would be AI fluency and learning agility. It will help your workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. And Krista?
Yeah, 100% agree. Starting with that skills inventory and mapping, figuring out what skills do we have, what do we need, and also what skills do employees have that they might not be using. And the second piece of that, which is a natural flow instead of a separate thing, is piloting internal mobility. So finding ways for employees to take on short-term gigs or cross-functional assignments or job swaps, really low risk, but potentially high reward, and also allowing them to build technology into their roles in different ways. So skills mapping and also tying it to mobility.
And last but certainly not least, Petronilla.
Thank you very much. Skills forecasting and rewarding learning. So yes, you have finance people beat us here because they'll have your focus for the whole year. L&D, HR forecast the skills in it, and then work backwards and let's achieve what we say we're going to achieve. Yeah. And make learning fun, let's have learning as fun, not learning as boring. Learning is so interesting. Learning should be fun in every bit. Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you. These were some really powerful insights. I think what's clear is that the future of workforce capability isn't just a learning strategy, it's a leadership mindset, which I think was powerfully represented here by all of our wonderful panelists. So thank you all for such an inspiring conversation. What I love about this panel is that it just shows how learning is no longer just a department, right? It's the whole operating system for transformation. So to our incredible panelists, Petronilla, Stacy, Krista, and Olajumoke, thank you for sharing your experiences and your vision for the future of learning and capability building. So up next, we do have engagement and retention strategies for Q4 stability. So stick around for that. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hello and welcome everyone to day 2. And I am your moderator, Renika Weston, and we will be talking about engagement and retention strategies for Q4 stability. So I'd like to take a moment to allow our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. So they will be zooming in almost like a beam me up Scotty. All right. So if we would, could we just go around the horn and just have everyone introduce themselves? Maybe tell us just quickly about your organization and where in the world are you calling from? So we will start with Cassandra.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Lowry. I have been in the HR space for over a decade, and I have a master's in organizational psychology. And employee engagement is my passion area. Currently, I am the global head of HR for a small startup organization. But one role before this, I was actually an employee engagement consultant working with hundreds of different organizations on their employee experience strategy. So I love this topic today. I'm excited to speak about it. And I am located in Columbus, Ohio, so East Coast time zone.
All right. Columbus, Ohio. All right. And then next we'll go with, let's see, Dr. Tracy.
Hey, everyone. Looking forward to the panel. My name's Tracy Brower. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase, which is the largest furniture manufacturer in the world. I am in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My PhD is in the sociology of work, so how we affect our work, how it affects us. I'm a senior contributor with Forbes and Fast Company, and I've written a few books. The most recent is called The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and I have a new one coming out in March called Critical Connections. I started my career in HR decades ago and have been working in HR, leading HR, and adjacent to HR for all of that time. So looking forward to it.
Oh, such a pleasure to meet you, Tracy. My parents lived in Grand Rapids, so offline we'll have to, Ada, Michigan. So let me be very yeah, home of Amway. All right. And Chelsea, tell us where I'm pronouncing that correct, right?
Yep. Okay. It's Chelsea. I'm also looking forward to the panel. I'm the director of HR at a global property management and real estate investment organization. Employee development, employee engagement is a big focus of my role and a major passion of mine as well. And I'm calling in from Vancouver, BC, Canada.
All right. Hello and welcome, Chelsea. All right. And last is it Alicia or Alyssa?
Alicia. Don't worry,
Alicia.
Everyone. It's just there to confuse people. Hi, I'm Alicia. I have been working for the last couple of years in FTSE 250 FinTech, leading on all things people and culture. And that's very much my jam and my bag. Like both Cassandra and Dr. Tracy, have a real passion and interest in organizational psychology and sociology, and also spend my time as a non-exec director, advising startup boards, as well as kind of being part of some exciting new ventures. And my specialism is usually in AI and culture consulting as well.
Love this. So as you could tell, we have some individuals who are very tenured, very experienced, and very knowledgeable as it relates to people. And again, we're going to talk about engagement and retention strategies for Q4. So the first question that I have, pretty simple question. In what ways are engagement and retention related to stability? And I don't know, Tracy, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. The title of our session really is so interesting to me. Like, it's an interesting topic generally, but especially like, how do these strategies contribute to Q4 stability? One of the early areas that I started my career in was like team dynamics and team development. And one of the things that an early professor said, which I thought was fascinating, was every team changes completely when you either add a member or remove a member. Like, it's not the same team, but it just has a couple of different members or maybe a little bit of change. It's a new team. And I think that is such a big deal, right? Like, we used to see the average person stay in a role for 5 to 7 years. Today, the average person stays in their role between 12 and 18 months. And so with all of that attrition and shift and change, even for the best reasons, when we're developing people within the organization, it still can be unsettling for teams to understand new roles, understand new expectations, get to know new team members, get to know the same team members in different roles. And so really having really robust systems for engagement and retention, that contributes to stability because we get to know each other. We get to count on each other. We understand expectations and our roles. And with all of the other instability around, it's really, really helpful when we get those moments of stability, even for short periods of time.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things you said is that whenever you bring a new member to the team, it's a new team. And as a leader, thinking about how do I retain the members of the current team is important, because sometimes you bring someone in and others will leave the organization. It's not always the bosses that cause us to leave. Sometimes it could be team members. So when you think about retention and stability, I think that's really important as well. Anyone else want to add anything to what Tracy has provided?
I really love Tracy's take. And I think the only thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic was even the word stability itself is in some ways quite contentious, because stability is not something that we can guarantee or control as leaders or as organizational leaders. And actually, it's that feeling. It's the feeling of the individuals and ultimately stability from an organizational level in terms of what we're able to deliver and actually achieve in that period. So I think there's something I really connect to what Tracy was saying there about like the humanness of it and making people feel grounded in that connection versus being able to control the external environment.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I got another question. There's a lot going on, not just here in the States, but when you think about across the globe, how can organizations sustain momentum when teams are fatigued and they're focused on deadlines? Or some people, they're like Q4, I'm talking about Q1, like they're thinking about next year. So how can organizations actually sustain this momentum that we need in order to be successful? Haven't heard from you, Chelsea or Cassandra. Some thoughts on that?
I can start that one off. I think that's a really great, thoughtful question. When I think of Q4, I think a lot of organizations' goal is to not just get through the year, but to get through the year well. And Q4 is really that time of the year where employees have been going through so much. And it's really that time of year where they need that extra push to get through the year well. A lot of times we celebrate employees at the end of the year or even going into Q1, but it's really in that Q4 itself, the beginning of Q4, when employees need that extra push, that extra drive to get through that year well. So I think that engagement and that gratitude is especially important in Q4. So those simple human touches, like those thank yous, that recognition on that small, personal, individual level is what really energizes employees to get through well. So it's not only those big celebrations at year end, those Christmas parties, those robust actions of gratitude, but it's those individual check-ins, those thank yous, those I appreciate yous, that employees feel connected to that bigger picture. And I think it's that connection, that appreciation, being a part of something bigger and understanding their impact that really help them get through that year end and get through it well.
Yeah, I love that. Stationery and stamps are a lost art. And I don't know if you remember the days, but I can remember receiving a handwritten note from one of my leaders during the holiday season. And I tell you, it was like, wow, they took the time to write in the stationery and to lick the stamp, put it on there and put it in. Now, granted, maybe they didn't do it, maybe their assistant did, but I love what you said is there's a push, but then there's gratitude on the other side of that we have to be thinking about for fourth quarter. Cassandra, anything to add or anyone else?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that about the gratitude. I am the same way. I actually have cards in my desk from previous managers who wrote me a really kind note, and usually it was at year end. But a different look at it too is a lot of organizations or, leaders, even HR, we're guilty of this. We are looking at things more as a sprint and not as a marathon. And I think there's just that realistic need of, yes, we need to close the quarter strong for the business's success, but also we need long-term success and not just the short-term, let's run to the finish line, put 150%, because a lot of times we expect employees to give their last 150% during the busiest year or the busiest time of the season when kids are off of school, they're thinking about family and holidays and trying to actually enjoy the holidays and not just feel like they're extra stressed through it. And then come January 2nd, we expect them to hit the ground running again, fresh. Nobody can do that. Nobody can sustain that level. And so I think it's something we need to balance of, yes, the business needs to close strong. There's targets we need to hit, especially at year end. But we also need to take time to rest and recharge because you're never going to get, the long-term productivity, engagement out of your employees if you only look at each quarter as this, oh my gosh, we need to go stronger and harder, push, push, push. There needs to be time to rest, reset, and just consider, that we're human. We aren't, robots, AI who can just continually go, go, go. And so I think that's an element too of take that time, allow your employees to rest, because then you'll probably get even better productivity come, fresh January 2nd, instead of people who are looking at LinkedIn thinking, I need something different. I'm getting too burnt out.
Yeah, I love that, Cassandra. Tracy?
Yeah, I think I did an article not too long ago about morale. And so I always like to dig into the definition of something when I'm doing an article on it. And morale is so interesting because it's both about present and future. And I think this has relevance to this Q4 push and all of that. So it's about a present good feeling about what we've done and recognition to the points that Chelsea and Cassandra have made. How do we recognize people for what they've done? But morale also has elements of future. And so there's inherently, when we feel a level of morale, we feel like we have capability to make a contribution in the future. We feel inherently a level of hope or optimism, we're going to be around for it. We're here for it. We're in for it. And so I think the implications for us to ensure momentum and ensure engagement in this Q4 period is to give people something to really focus on. Number one, what are my focuses professionally? What are my focuses at work? And how do I keep that focus on? Number two, we already talked about, recognizing people. Number three, I think when we are really specific about what we need from people uniquely, not just what is the business focus or what's the department's goal, but what is it that person can uniquely contribute in terms of their capabilities. And then finally, I think when we give people a sense of that future, that hope and that optimism, here's where we're going and these are our purposes and this is what we're excited about in the new year. So we can finish strong with focus and really amp into the new year in terms of what we're optimistic about.
Yeah, I love this. For those of you that are listening in, these amazing HR leaders are dropping some gems. I don't know that I ever thought about morale from the perspective of the past and the future. But I tell you, I will never forget that. I wrote that down. Love that. I do have a question around engagement. It's a word. It's funny. When you work in corporate spaces, you use these words. I call it corporate slang, right? And a lot of times I can remember going to talk to my family members. I use the word like, we got to socialize this. And I remember my cousin saying, what does that mean, right? But when you're around people who know what that means, you just use it, right? And so the word engagement is a word that probably, I don't know, 15 years ago, it was coming into fashion. Maybe 50 years ago, no one used that term. But for each of you, what does that word mean? And I'll give you an example. For me as a facilitator, when I'm facilitating something, engagement means, for those that do a lot of talking, I need you talking. For those of you that don't, I need you in the chat. Light up the chat. That shows me your level of engagement. And so I spell that out for people. So if you had a new manager and they were coming in, they're like, everybody keeps talking about this word engagement. How would you describe that to them, given the context of your organization? And I'd love to hear from each person. So who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go first on that one. I think it's such a good question. And I think that's sort of what I was also thinking about with even the idea of stability. There are words that we use that actually can translate really differently. I think for my world, when I think about the word engagement, it's very much based in connection. So it's how connected do people feel to their work, to the company, to the direction, to feeling like they have a part to play, and feeling, Tracy said something really great there when you're talking about that morale piece, feeling hopeful about the future. I think that's part of what I really sense in the connection. And I think that's also why when we talk about low engagement and we're talking about low connection, if you don't feel like you have a place in that space, in that organization, you feel disconnected from it, that's where you start to see results, and sort of those tangible things like not just engagement scores, but actually lower productivity, lower deliverables because of that disconnect. So I think that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, I love that. Cassandra?
I love that. I definitely have to agree with the connection piece. I think when I first am really trying to dig into engagement and what it means to me, my mind jumps automatically to Dr. Martin Seligman. So he described the flow state, and how you're in this place of perfect balance between good, healthy stress, and not tipping over into I'm overwhelmed stress, but this area of you're being challenged, you're doing work that's exciting to you, and it's just like lighting your brain up, and you're just feeling like you're being stretched in a good way. And so I really like that analogy of a flow state, because in terms of doing the work, I think of engagement of work that recharges my batteries instead of just drains them, work that's meaningful, work that's fulfilling to me, work that makes me feel like I am making an impact, even if it's, a small piece to the overall success of the business. And so like I and many want to do work that they're proud of. And I think that's where engagement has become more over the last decade or two, is people are no longer just going to work for a paycheck. They're finding more of their identity in work and the work that they're doing, more of that meaning. And so that's my first piece. So when I think about engagement, it's really that feeling of fulfilling meaningful work. But I think even deeper, I very much agree with you, Alicia, around it's that connection, because I've been at workplaces that I've done work that I've really enjoyed and have felt that flow state, but I didn't have like a friend at work, or I didn't have a leader who I looked up to as a mentor. And I always felt that absence. And I have been at workplaces where I had work that was meaningful and fulfilling, and I had friends and mentors. And that certainly, those instances in my past were times where I felt, yes, I was really engaged at that company.
Yeah, I love that. Tracy or Chelsea? Oh, Tracy.
Yeah, I love this question. There's actually some really interesting social science research on the definition of engagement. And we all hear that engagement is struggling. According to Gallup, it's actually at an 11-year low globally. So it's definitely the right thing for us to be paying attention to. But engagement tends to be about 4 things. According to social science research, in addition to the way that we each understand it, which is super, super valid as well. But it's a sense of dedication, Like I'm committed, I'm dedicated, I really want to get through this, I really want to get this thing done. It's also a sense of immersion, which is super related, Cassandra, to that flow state. Like I kind of lose track of what I'm doing. Like I'm immersed in what I'm doing. And all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? Right. Like, and that is super related to the cognitive experience of flow. So immersion is another. A third is mattering. Like we feel like our work matters. And I think, Alicia, you were speaking to purpose, right? And a feeling like we're part of that bigger picture. So mattering. And then finally, there's an energy component to it. And I like to think about this going both ways. Like I'm energized by my work and I want to put energy into my work. And not all work has to be, you know, like mind-blowingly engaging. My expense reports are not going to be mind-blowingly engaging ever. But, you know, hopefully we have elements of work that are engaging to us, things that we're passionate about, you know, projects or certain parts of the work that engage us in particular. So I like those four elements as one way to think about engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. What about you, Cassandra?
I can jump in. Cassandra, Tracy, and Alicia had really great points. Not too much to add. I would say I completely agree with that word connection. And being engaged to me means employees being connected to the bigger picture, something beyond their own work and seeing that impact. And we talked about it earlier, but that change, or Tracy mentioned it, that change in tenure that people now, the average tenure in a role is 12 to 18 months. And I think one of that main change is because some of the younger generations coming into the workplace, Gen Z, and even in the coming years, we'll see Generation Alpha entering the workforce. And I think that engagement is even more important to those generations than we've seen in some of the other generations. So I think focusing on that and creating opportunities and diving into engagement and what that means and how we can foster and nurture that for our up and coming employees is going to be a major focus moving forward.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, Chelsea. You know, you can't really go to any of these HR sessions without them talking about the different generations that are there in the workforce. And, you know, even when you use the word engagement, if I were to think about a Gen X, like the word engagement, for those of you who, from a partner perspective, maybe you're engaged to be married. If I talk about what that means to a Gen X, to a baby boomer, etc., there may be some differences, but there are a lot of similarities there. And so as much as we think about the generational differences, each of them is likely grounded in some of the things that Tracy talked about. I wrote them down. The dedication piece, right? If you think about an actual commitment of engagement, I am dedicated to someone, they are dedicated to me. There's an energy that flows between two people. So there should be an energy that flows between the work I do, the organization that I'm with, the immersion, like all of those things that you talked about. When we take the word and even take it into a different context and we think about it from that perspective, what does it mean? I think that helps as well. Because again, it could mean different things depending on who you're talking to in the workforce. So then the question that I have is, you're doing a session with leaders, and these are new leaders, and they're like, okay, engagement's great, but what about a team that's not necessarily high in engagement? What are some of the best ways to catalyze and nurture that engagement? If you had one or two things, what would you say to a new leader that may come to you and ask you that?
I think it definitely starts with understanding the individualism of your team. I think, you know, it's, again, we're always balancing the macro versus the micro. Like we want to think about the whole team and how do we be fair to everybody? How do we keep things consistent? But also engagement is personal. Each individual is motivated by different things. I actually really like the perspective even of looking at the generations, is not thinking of it as generational differences, but more thinking of it as life stage differences. Because at one point in time, you know, millennials were the new group and leaders were like, I don't know what to do with these people. Like they lived with technology, you know, they had computers growing up and cell phones for the most part, and they had new technology, new ways of how they showed up. And, you know, a lot of times they're more motivated by, typically they're single, jumping into the workforce, they had different wants and needs. And then when you enter the life stage of, you know, maybe whatever you decide, whether you chase hobbies or you want to settle down with a family, all that is to say, I think it's good to look at it more as like a life stage. And so going back to my main point is understanding the motivations of each individual. Some might be a little bit more motivated by that recognition piece, whether that be more of feedback and encouragement, or maybe it's monetary. Others might be motivated more by the work. Others might be motivated by something different. And so understanding each individual and really leaning into providing that area to them in order to help them reach their higher engagement, understand where you can remove obstacles for them. That's really the goal, or that's the thing that a manager needs to do. They need to not just manage people. They need to be a coach. They need to be a mentor. I know that can seem overwhelming to new leaders, but that is the mark of a strong leader, is somebody who can be all those different pieces, and not just somebody who manages people or manages, time or priorities.
Love that. Love that. Love that. I am curious, when you think about the role of a CHRO, so you're talking about leaders in the organization, and I got to be a mentor, I got to be a sponsor, I have to be all these things to individuals. Okay, now let's take that up a level as a CHRO. So when you think about CHROs, how can they connect talent development and culture initiatives? Because one of the things that you talked about, Cassandra, was knowing the individual and their individual fingerprint and how different they are. And some of that is cultural, right? Some of that is understanding individuals' culture. So thinking about a CHRO, how can they connect talent development and some of the cultural initiatives, thinking about the culture of the organization, to real retention that gains, lower high turnover rates within the organization? Any thoughts on that? Tracy?
Yeah, I think your question is brilliant for the insight that's already in it. Like one of the things that we know drives retention is development, growth, stretch, challenge. And so that CHRO really thinking strategically about growth and development, I think, is so great in terms of the way that you're framing it. And then I think that connection to culture, right? Like we start with what are the business outcomes that we want to accomplish, and what are the ways that the culture needs to encompass, foster, catalyze, nurture, help to ensure that we achieve those outcomes so we can all continue to be part of the culture for the long term. And so I think there's a really nice kind of logic train that we can think about. Like if we want a culture that's collaborative, then we want to help people grow by, putting them on new teams or helping them express their talents outside of their swim lane, or put into place strategic processes where we can manage talent across the business and share and develop talent across the business. Or if we want a culture that's innovative, we want to be developing people and helping them to grow around new technologies and new capabilities and critical thinking models and all of that. Or if we want a culture that is decisive or movement oriented in terms of the choices that we make, then we want to develop people in terms of their ability to make quick decisions or assess the context or understand how decisions have downstream effects, right? My point is that what we'll do is really think about what are those elements of culture that we want: collaboration, innovation, decision-making, risk-taking, fast movement, you name it. And then really think about what are the growth areas that we need both as an organization and as teams and individuals. And then I love the points that you all are making too, that it's not a one size fits all. We need to be thinking about what are the strategic models and programmatic solutions that allow people to grow in the direction that they're most interested in growing, based on their life stage, based on their priorities, based on how they want to develop within the organization. So for me, those are the connections between culture and kind of talent development and growth and retention.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. All right. We have time for a few more questions. One of the things that I heard a colleague of mine say many years ago is we do a great job with exit interviews, but we don't do such a great job with these stay interviews. Like, why are people staying with the organization, and really getting an understanding of that. So kind of in the same, breath of that, compensation is huge, right? Compensation is one of the reasons why people stay with organizations, but we said it's more than that. So beyond compensation, what retention levers? Maybe there's one. It could be a simple one. It could be this big strategic initiative that your organization is enrolled in. But beyond compensation, what retention levers have had the most lasting, or could have the most lasting impact when you think about Q4? Chelsea, any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tie it a little bit back to what Tracy just said on development. I think development is a key lever in retention. And I think one point of being a growth culture is to encourage more transparency in development plans for individuals. Like, an old model of HR is to have these succession planning conversations kind of behind closed doors. So we'll know behind the scenes, this individual is set up for growth, they're going to be the successor. But continuing to be transparent about that, letting that individual know the plans that we have in place for them, where they want to grow, and aligning with that individual and the plans that the business or the organization has for them, and helping them grow and bridge those gaps so that they have a clear development path outlined. When employees have that development, they know that the organization is invested in them and invested in their growth. That's a huge development and retention motivator beyond compensation.
Yeah, love that. Anyone else? Go ahead, Alicia.
Sorry, as both of us unmuted at the same time, I'll go really quickly. I was just going to say that I think that there is macro and micro, and we've kind of very much been reflecting on this as a panel in terms of how it feels to experience being engaged and what that looks like on an organizational and on an individual level. But a lever that can be really powerful for engagement in that Q4 period that is often undervalued or not recognized is the team culture element, and the people managers and the power that they have over what team culture they create. And something I've been really doing in the last few years, because I did it in previous teams and was just so shocked by the results that I was able to achieve with those teams, was to encourage managers of teams, whether they're 2 or whether they're 15 or 30, to define and articulate the type of team culture that they want within their area. So you're taking like the organizational, the functional, and whatever kind of subsector that you sit in, and you're sort of saying, pulling on these strands, this is who we are. So one of my previous teams, our kind of ethos was, we're really innovative, we're agile, but we're super supportive, and we're here for each other. And that was like the sentiment we had. So when stuff got rough, it wasn't just we're inspired by this big picture. It's like we're inspired by our team members because we all show up for each other and we believe in each other, and we're doing Friday shout outs for the small wins and the stuff no one else is seeing. And, that can actually be its own self-sustaining cycle. And that is a really great way of creating, I almost think of them as those like water orbs. People got really into them at one point where they'd just like blow up bubbles and people would be running on water. I think that that's what like team leaders have the capability to create, is this insulation within their own small space of how it feels to be part of that team, to be motivated within that team, even if the ocean around you is churning, changing, feeling quite disrupted or feeling quite drained. You've got this bubble that you're in that you can feel grounded in and supported in. So I think that's, supporting people managers to do that and to think about that can be a really powerful lever as well.
Love that. What about you, Cassandra?
I'm going to jump in really fast because I think the topic's already been so well discussed, but I wanted to jump in real quick on Chelsea's comments around like the development piece is so critical as a retention area and showing people their path. And if I may add an additional piece to that, and Jeannie actually beat me to it in the chat, but making sure that the employee is actually wanting that path. I've had individuals who we think, oh, wow, they're an excellent individual contributor. Let's promote them into a management position. And we kind of move ahead, like leadership and HR, we move ahead and the individual's like, no, like I want to stay an individual contributor. I want to continue to dive deep in my role and my expertise. I don't want to move into being that people element and not have as much opportunity to do the work. And so I think that's really, really critical to make sure that the individual actually wants that path. And I think that's also quickly, another area that sometimes we forget about is organizations think once you get to a certain level, you have to move into management. I think the best organization has two paths, management path and more expertise individual contributor path. So like some businesses have principals. It's like the highest level of individual contributor that's usually on par with maybe like a VP type level. And I think that's really important for organizations to have both a path for management and then a path that continues on as an individual contributor. Because not everybody wants to be a leader, but everybody wants to keep on digging in and gaining experience and promotion in their role.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to have a lightning round, 1.5 minutes or less. And this is your own piece of advice. So, Tracy, I know you're the author of several books, so this might be noteworthy, right? You might have to get our IP so you can put this in a book. But one of the things, and I'll give an example, one of the things that I think is really important is to watch the squares. Right? When you talk about retention and engagement, like how are people really doing? Have you ever had someone ask you, how are you doing? No, like really, how are you doing? Right? That second time just really sort of connects there with individuals. So thinking about that statement and what I just said, when you think about the end of the year, what's one year-end engagement or retention action that every HR leader, if they're on this phone, if they're on this call, if you call them up on the phone, what's one engagement or retention action that every HR leader should take as they get ready to step into 2026? So this is from the heart. This is no research. This is nothing. This is your belief. 1.5 minutes. Let's start with you, Tracy.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. I think the number one thing they can do is make a point of talking to each of the people on their team and thanking them for their contribution and being clear about how it relates to the successful future of the organization.
Love that. All right. What about you, Cassandra?
Similar, gathering information from the individuals. I think as HR, it's really important that we're always, surveying employees, and hopefully it's a anonymous survey where people feel like they can be authentic. The little caveat is don't survey unless you plan to do something about it. So if you spend that time surveying employees, gathering their information and insights about what's going well and what's going wrong or not going well, make sure that you're actually going to take an action on the other side of it.
Love that. Love that. And what about you, Alicia?
I would say that an area of opportunity for lots of people is to look at the initiatives that you're already doing and to think about how people are perceiving that within the organization. I know so many amazing people leaders who are doing great things, but actually the organization and the people in it don't understand why they're doing it or don't understand the value that it's bringing for them. So like map out what you are currently doing and tell people the why. And not your why, not your business why, but the why for them. So communicate to that audience the value it will add for them, and communicate back what it's going to be doing for the business as well. So creating that connection to the initiatives you're already doing and helping people understand what it's going to mean for them can actually be really powerful, because it's not adding any more work, but it's just amplifying the work and the value we're already doing. So if you're doing great connection work, great initiatives, great development, telling them that why and reinforcing how that is part of your organizational culture can be a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah, I love that. And what about you, Chelsea?
Thanks. And just really quickly, I would say that it's recognition, and that recognition is fuel, especially in Q4, and that it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be grandiose, but it does need to be sincere and individualistic.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to thank those in the audience for your time and attention. Please show some love to our esteemed panelists. And if you'd like to learn more about the work that they are doing, please make sure that you connect with them on LinkedIn. So I just want to say thank you to everyone here on the panel. You all have an amazing afternoon, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of Hacking HR's Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit. My name is Danielle LePage, and I'm Hacking HR's Chief Learning Officer, and I'm happy today to be your moderator for today's session, which is called Internal Mobility and Career Pathways. Before we begin, I want to spotlight something special. Hacking HR's new Premium Plus membership. It's your all-access pass to the best of Hacking HR. Live and on-demand certificate programs, crash courses, our new mini master's degrees, digital certificates, educational credits, lifetime networking, mental health support, and more, all in one place. So with that, Jessa, would you kindly bring our panelists to the stage so we can get the party started? Hey, everybody. How's it going today?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Now that you guys are here, why don't we just go around the room and introduce who we are, what we do, and why we love this topic. Ben, how about you kick us off?
Hey, Ben Russo. I'm Director of Employee Success at Pebble. We are an employer of record. I've been here for about a year, based out of the mean streets of Marin County, California. I've been in the HR and development space for about 12 years now. Personally, I'm responsible for career development, internal communications, and employee engagement. And I love people, and I love seeing people succeed, and I love being able to help out the company. And with development done right, you can do all of those things. So it's a great combination.
Nice to meet you, Ben. Thank you. And over to you, Nate.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone attending. My name is Nate McConnell. I'm a Chief Personnel Officer with a community bank here based out of Northern Colorado. So responsible for all aspects of HR, from the hiring to the retirement and everything in between, as well as security and facilities. And I think this is such an important topic as we continue to have generations leaving the workforce and new generations entering. So we're kind of seeing all aspects from a mobility and career standpoint, and really looking forward to today's panel discussion.
We appreciate you, Nate. Thank you. And Mario.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Mario Schwarz. My role as a VP People Partner at Sportradar, partner directly mainly with the global teams of product and engineering, so quite tech oriented. The whole scope, what the world of people and HR is bringing to us, right? So the topic today is my business as usual, and even it's a business as usual, quite an interesting and hot topic for me. So looking forward.
Awesome. Nice to see you, Mario. Thank you. And over to you, Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Irwin. I'm the VP of Global Human Resources for Sage Parts, which is an Alvest-owned company. We supply parts and accessories for GSE equipment. around the world. So about 18 years in human resources, and this is a particularly interesting topic to me, internal mobility, especially being over a global company. Internal mobility and career pathways are very important in our particular company.
Great, Linda. We're lucky to have you. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we're going to break it down like this. We have some personalized questions. We've got some bigger core questions for everybody, and then we'll close it off with a few. So we'll get started with you, Ben. Ben, how do you make career paths feel actionable? Not just static ladders, but tools for development, real development conversations.
Yeah, so we're actually using AI to do that, which is really exciting. We took all of our job descriptions, which we actually created using AI. We created the essentially a template for each level. And then we gave it to each job family leader, and we had them essentially play Mad Libs, where we said, look, this is a P3 job description. There's certain things you can't change, but there's certain things that you can change, which are specific to your role. And so we did that across the whole organization. And then we fed that folder with all the job descriptions to an AI agent in ChatGPT. And so we then rolled this out to employees, and we said, well, we're actually in the middle of doing this right now. We haven't done this to all employees yet. We've only done it to some. But what we've said to them is, okay, go and talk to the AI agent, and it'll help you figure out what you want to do in your career. So the AI agent will ask it some questions. Do you want to move laterally? Do you want to move to the next role? What are you interested in? And then it will ask them for their LinkedIn, their resume, and a portfolio if they have it. They'll put all that in, and then we'll say, okay, great. You want to go move into this role, and these are clearly your strengths. These are things that you can work on based on that. We've also uploaded our IDP, or individual development plan template, into the agent. So it actually creates an individual development plan, which is templatized with our branding on it, and gives it to the employee. And then the employee can work with the manager based on what the agent has done with them, going back and forth with them. So it's really cool. It's a great way to bring it to life. And yeah, so that's one of the ways that we're doing that at Pebble.
We love that. Thank you. And we've got the transcriptions from this panel. So we're going to take those action items and turn them into something. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have any techniques that they want to share similar to Ben? All right, moving on to the next question. Mario, this one's for you. In fast-growing companies, how do you keep career path frameworks dynamic as business priorities evolve?
Yeah, so quite similar to what Ben shared. We try to keep it as transparent as possible, but also keep it on a very, let's say, on a level that's not in that much detail that you have to adjust it every time something changes, right? So you keep it on a level with the priorities and with the focus, which shouldn't shift too much, right? Our career framework and all the linked details to that are also linked to, let's say, that identified and determined organizational critical capabilities, where we think this is necessary to be not only successful at the moment, so also future-proofed. So ideally, it's not only a short-term view on that, also a look into the future. Other than that, that's how we set the frame, I would say. In the use, we try to keep this alive, and I think, and this is what we observe, is that the career frameworks come alive when they are used, right? So they're part of IDP creation processes when it comes to talking about succession planning and what do we need to do to create a let's say, sustainable and reasonable learning path to get people on a level that they are real successors for the next step or a lateral move. and so keep it relevant, right? And the moment we notice that the framework, what we provide, is not that helpful anymore, right? Then I would say we reach a point where we need to adjust, right? So we see it more that they shouldn't be fences, they should be more runaways.
So, Mario, you mentioned succession planning. What have you seen work to make it a dynamic, ongoing practice that actually develops people?
You need to stay in constant conversations, right? It's nothing what you said once a year and then as part of a checklist exercise or tick the boxes exercise. It needs to be really something what you have on the radar. I would say that it's a core business and leader responsibility to make sure that succession planning is in place, because business continuity is, I would say, a core business responsibility, and succession planning is part of that, right? So a constant check, a constant readiness check of potential successors, and providing the support people need to develop, I would say, is the core or the key for making that successful.
Right on. Over to you, Linda. For high potential employees, how do you proactively create development opportunities versus waiting for them to seek moves on their own?
Yeah, I think a lot of times if they're a high-performing employee, they're already looking for those opportunities. But on the chance that they're not, I think to echo what Mario said, it has to be a constant conversation. I think it cannot be part of a once a year performance review where you really take the time to evaluate who your high performers are and have that conversation. If you're only doing that once a year, you're going to lose them throughout the year. I think also keeping in mind that, development isn't necessarily a job title or a new role, right? It might just be a new opportunity to learn an additional skill. It might be something like, allowing them to manage a project. It might be introducing them to another department of the business so that they can learn more about the business as a whole, in addition to, whatever role that they have in the business. And all of those are things that kind of keep that conversation ongoing throughout the year, because those opportunities are going to come up constantly throughout the year, making sure that you know who those high performers are and that you're being very intentional with looking for those opportunities. When a new project is launched, making sure that you're being intentional about looking at who your high performers are. Have they ever had an opportunity to help manage a project or to shadow a project manager to learn more about that? But I think a big key to it is keeping in mind that it could be growth in a certain skill set that they don't already have, or an advanced project, not necessarily just the next job title that they might be looking for.
Right on. And this leads me to the next question. It's what's the right balance between creating structured career paths versus allowing the employees some flexibility to design their own non-traditional career journey?
Yeah, I think you have lots of opportunities, because some people, like that path vision. They like to see, progression on paper and what that looks like and what their next targets are. I think we have to keep in mind that everybody, learns differently. Everybody views things differently. Everybody has different motivations. So having that opportunity to see what all of the options are and have that open to all employees. I think in terms of it being self-guided instead of a defined path, you open things like maybe a leadership development program, project management program, open. And everybody probably has some type of LMS or course content that they have access to, making sure that all of those things are as accessible as they can be to everyone, so that employees can choose where their journey is whenever they have an area of interest. I think it has to be both, because you do need a certain amount of tracking, progression, and a certain amount of succession planning is going to involve more of a structured tracking program. But having those alternatives for employees who are just looking for a self journey, again, so that you have opportunities depending on how the person learns and what their motivation is.
Great. Thanks for that. I'm just going to open up to the floor now. The following questions, just jump in and we can get some real discussion going. And you did mention some, Linda, some really great examples of, maybe some hybrid opportunities for an employee to grow. But what other ideas do we have? What does internal mobility mean to you guys beyond promos and title changes? Are there some other creative ways we could discuss?
I think everyone really hit on a lot of key topics. And one of the things that we're really putting a lot of focus on is not only understanding your role, but understanding the industry, our industry, and how it reflects within our customer base, within our communities, and creating greater ties to that. And I think from a leadership standpoint, I think also keeping in mind creating opportunities to learn more about other roles and other procedures and processes internally that may not be necessarily tied to their immediate role. Because I think I've experienced this in my career as well. Why are you learning that? That's not part of your responsibilities. You're automatically, as a leader, you are deflating that desire to learn and grow organizationally. So not only are we offering the tools, but are we as leaders creating unintentional roadblocks out of hopes that we maintain those high performers within our team, but are we keeping them from growing for the success of our organization as our teams for the future?
It's a really good point. I wrote this down. That's a really good point. How can organizations make career conversations ongoing and not just tied to performance reviews? Any ideas?
I can jump in. And by the way, I was trying to join the chat because there were some comments about the AI bot, and it won't let me for whatever reason. But it's not a skills GPT. It's a GPT that we created internally, and happy to talk to anyone about it. You can just connect with me on LinkedIn, just FYI. And then as far as making it ongoing, so I think this has already been said, right? But like career development conversation shouldn't happen once a year. And so really it's helping to enable your managers to understand that a big part of their role is helping your employees develop their careers. It's going to help your employees, but it's also going to help your team, and it's going to help the company, right? The more skills they can build, the more muscle they can put on. So really development conversations should be something that are happening on a continual basis as part of regular check-ins, whether they be weekly or bi-weekly at least. And then everyone should have an individual development plan, right? And even if it's like, well, you don't have to know exactly where you want to go in your career, because not everyone knows that, but it's like, at least what are a couple skills that you want to work on? And then the manager and the employee can check in on that and see how they're doing, and recommend some stretch assignments maybe, or give feedback on the progress the employee's making. But it should be something that is constantly on top of mind for the manager, right? There's the performance aspect, but there's also the development aspect of your employee, which I'd argue is just as important.
Yes, maybe what I would like to add here, I think, is the cultural or the mindset aspect, what I would also put on a focus, because the more people understand that they own their own journey, right? And the company or the leaders, let's say, just provide the map, right? But they have to drive the car or the vehicle. The more likely they find their ways, right, to get into the project they're interested, or get their knowledge, what they lack for maybe the next step, right? And I think what's also important is that we understand careers not as ladders anymore, right? More than ecosystems, right? It's so fast changing, and companies and industries are so fast changing that if you're on a step at this moment, right, tomorrow it can look completely differently. And the more flexible you are, and the more you work on your own journey, the more reasons you have to be prepared for whatever is coming, right?
Yeah, thank you, Mario. And someone wrote in the chat, and by the way, if you can't join the live chat, Ben, for example, maybe you can join it after you're out of this panel and you can jump in there if you want. Someone just asked, just to be clear, whose job is it to design a career progression system? Is it HR or is it the manager?
I'd argue it's HR, but then it's on HR to enable the manager to use that system and to make sure that it's being utilized. But I think the problem is if you leave it up to a manager, then you get a lot of inequity potentially, right? Because certain managers are going to do things certain ways. Some will do things really well. Some won't do things at all. Some will do things kind of half-assed. And so that is why it's kind of on HR to come up with a system which is good and equitable and that you can then train managers to use. That would be my opinion on that.
Do you think people managers are equipped and supporting their employees with a career progression plan?
In general?
I was going to say in general.
Yeah, in general. Do you think people managers are doing this?
Depends. I don't know. I'll let other people respond, but I would say it completely depends, right? If you teach them then and you put incentives on it, then yes, they should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with Ben on both points. It's definitely it should be driven by HR because you're going to end up with a lot of inequity and a lot of inconsistency throughout an organization if it's not. But I think it has to be in collaboration with the manager. And I agree, it's probably going to depend company to company and even within the company, manager to manager. Some managers don't have that skill set, haven't been given that skill set, aren't interested in that skill set of being able to develop people. So that's why if HR owns it, they can help develop, and where there's maybe not a skill set there, they can help a little bit more in that area. If not, I think it's probably not going to happen the way it should.
If I can add just one thing, I think I agree with the panel so far. I think HR, what I view HR as, is the search engine. You type in an address into Google Maps, it's going to give you 5 different ways to get there. There's the scenic route, the fast route, one that avoids the tolls. So it's the manager and the employee working together then from there to determine how do we get there. Do we need checkpoints? Is there certain areas where we need to accomplish before arriving to that destination, and finding the best path for that individual and making sure that you are able to have those touch points and follow up and ensuring that they are getting what they need in order to accomplish that.
I see someone in the chat has said, it should be part of people manager development. And there would have to be a KPI tied to this to actually make sure it happens. And I think also there'd be benefit in teaching our employees how to have career-based conversations with their people manager as well. All right, next question here. How can companies more effectively engage employees in internal mobility ops before they start looking elsewhere outside the company?
Maybe from my side, back to what I mentioned before, it's about creating the foundation in terms of mindset and culture, right? That people don't have the feeling a lateral move is less worse than a promotion or something like that. That if you change from your current job to another one, it always has to be the next step on the ladder. If you have this solid foundation and people understand that the ongoing changes are valuable anyways, right? Then also the let's say motivation to figure out what opportunities do I have around my current position. It's higher, yeah.
I'm sure it's happened to me before where I have seen a job posting for the company I was working with that looked so fantastic and it looked like my dream job, but I didn't know about it internally. it's an external job posting. I didn't know it was available on the inside. So what are some methods of engagement that an organization can do to actively engage the people we already have that may have those skills? Are there any different techniques, practices that we could share?
Yeah, I think one thing you can do is exactly what you talked about. Anytime there's an opening, it should be posted internally. All staff should be aware of it, but you can take it a next step further. If you have a system, whether it's your LMS or somewhere in your HRIS system that has employees who can list the skill sets that they have or skill sets that they're interested in, that maybe it auto pushes those new job openings to them if that's an area that they have experience or interest in, so that you're proactively sending it to someone that may have that interest, to make sure that they know that it's an opening that exists within the company.
Yeah, and also just being proactive about the communications, right? So you could have like, I don't know, maybe in a Slack channel every week you put all of the internal jobs, but are people going to see that? Maybe. But if also at the all hands meeting you do a story every week or whenever it's feasible of someone who took an internal job based on going into that Slack channel and seeing it, that kind of brings it to life, right? So if you can tell stories around like internal promotions or just career development in general, that kind of brings to life more of your kind of static pages and links and resources. So storytelling also can be very, very helpful with that.
Yeah, what I observed, what could be an enabler is fostering the cross-functional collaboration, right? The more people know what's happening outside of their little box, let's say, right? The more people they know, the bigger the network, right? The bigger the chance that things develop some kind of naturally, right? And the more they know, the more they see what might be interesting as well. And so options pop up sometimes also automatically.
I find some employees often are a little bit nervous, maybe kind of going around their direct manager and going and talking to the hiring manager, another people manager, and another team about that job opportunity. So what are some ways that we could kind of bring these silos down and make it more comfortable for people to seek other work inside the company? Mentorship programs, could we discuss those a little bit? Have any of you had any experience in your organizations where you have an actual, like a mentorship program that kind of works hand in hand with the career progression plan?
Yeah, we have a mentorship program and it's great, right? It's a great way to not just learn about a different role or a different part of the company, but it's also a great way to network and find an ally, and usually an ally who's in a position to potentially help you, right? So we've seen lots of lateral moves based on the mentorship program. Oftentimes people join the mentorship program because they want to learn more about a certain role. And then they realize, oh, this role's cool. I actually do want to go into this role, or no, this role sucks. I definitely don't want to do this. Good thing I went through this mentorship program and now I understand that, right? But mentorship is an absolutely amazing way to create relationships, create understandings, and ultimately can lead to mobility throughout the organization.
Do your organizations, do you feel like you lose a lot of great folks because there wasn't an internal career progression plan for them, so they completely leave the company?
Absolutely. I think being in HR and leadership roles, I think you unfortunately do see that. And if there is not a path forward, people are going to ultimately create their own. And a lot of times it takes going externally. How many times do you hear, well, in order for me to move up, I'm going to have to leave and then come back. So how do we keep that individual in that role, exposing them to other opportunities within the organization? Or is there a true disconnect on what they actually want to accomplish in their career? So is that the shortfall there?
What could a people manager do today, without the fancy bells and whistles and programs, maybe they don't exist? What could they do today to check in on that to retain these amazing employees? What kind of thing could they do?
Build a relationship. I mean, it honestly all comes down to trust, right? Like if you have a real tight relationship between a manager and an employee, then the employee will likely say, hey, I'm thinking of looking for a new role. That takes a hell of a lot of trust, but you can get there, right? And so really, I think the biggest thing and the biggest lever that a manager can pull is to really get to know their employee and build that trust. That if you take away all the programs and everything else, if you have trust, like that's pretty decent and you can get fairly far with it, right? So I would say that's the biggest thing is just trust, which then leads to a transparent conversation, which then hopefully leads to trying to find opportunities for the employee. That's without all the programs and everything.
Yeah, I would say in an ideal world, the manager knows already before the employee mentions it, right? So ideally, you are already prepared in a way that you say, okay, this person is already ready for the next step, right? That the current role reached the, let's call it the ceiling, right? And work together already on what might be the next step. And ideally within the company, right? Already created some options or provided some options and make this person then ready. That would be ideal, of course. Is it always possible? Difficult.
I think sometimes people leave because, they're or maybe a high performer, but their manager doesn't want to let them go because they are such a high performer, but don't want to give them those opportunities. So I think one thing that you can do is make sure that you're communicating with your managers to help them understand that if you don't develop someone, they're going to leave. They're going to be developed somewhere, whether it's within your company or externally. If that's the case that people are leaving, if you're seeing that in exit interviews as the reason that people are leaving, but make sure that you have that open communication, not just from manager to employee, but also HR with managers to help them understand. And I saw it somewhere earlier this week, the phrasing talent circulation, instead of viewing it as, losing someone out of their department, view it as talent circulation within the company as a whole to retain them. And so that's one of the things that you can do is make sure that there's open communication there on why someone is not being developed if they're not.
Right. Some managers have that tendency to hold on to really great team members and they want to keep them on their team. Do you think that maybe communicating to the employees that HR has an open door policy if you want to come and talk to us, and because maybe employees aren't comfortable having these conversations, maybe there's a reason with their direct supervisor. So maybe having an alternative part of the program where you can go and talk to HR about it. What do we think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think HR should always have an open door policy about anything, and in particular that. And it goes back to what what was said earlier about building trust, making sure that employees have that trust with HR that they can come and have those conversations if they're feeling that their manager is doing that. Part of keeping a check on that is the structured part of the program, right? We talked earlier about having some structure to it, and then some things that are kind of an employee-owned journey. The structure part of it is part of that, right? Doing those check-ins to see, what's happening if someone is in a structured check-in asking for development opportunities, but you don't see that happen, getting to the bottom of why. And if it comes back to, a manager wanting to hold on to that talent, we have to help them understand why that is not going to be the case. If we don't develop them, they are going to leave and go somewhere where they can be developed if that's something that they're interested in. But HR should absolutely have an open door policy to discuss that.
How do you see internal mobility shaping the future of career development over the next few years?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I think it's going to play a vital role in career development over the next few years. and specifically to our industry, but in cross industry as well, there's going to be an influx of those leaving the workforce and taking a lot of that decades of experience with them. So the more we can expose and circulate that talent, the more they understand our business, and it opens them up for opportunities for leadership down the road, or expanding into new roles in cross-functional departments, or maybe a department they just haven't been exposed to. So I think that internal career mobility and circulating that talent to continue to develop internally versus external first, I think is going to play a big role in the future.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the same thing. I think even the exact same job title and the exact same role, what we're seeing now, right, is new technology, the introduction of AI, all of these things are going to change. Even in the same role, you're going to need new skills to do the exact same role that you've done previously. So skills building is going to be crucial to any internal mobility or career pathways conversations going forward.
Does anyone want to share maybe one success story, something you've seen or been part of that shows internal mobility done right?
Yeah, I can share, and I think it's been a lot of what we, lateral movements. We do career ladders and career lattices. And so one of the main ideas behind figuring out, what a P3 is and making sure that a P3 is a P3 is a P3, whether they're in finance or legal or sales or whatever it is that, well, really some of the details change, but a lot of the skills are the same. And so it's allowed for a lot of lateral movement within the company, which is great because, again, you're building skills by going to a different department and learning a different part of the organization. It's really helping you understand the company as a whole and how to solve problems better. So we've had a lot of lateral movement based on having very uniform definitions of each job level. And so that for us has been great, especially since, when you're not maybe crushing it as a company and growing revenue a ton, like lateral movement is the way to go. And so we put a system in place which has allowed for a fair bit of that.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Ben. Anybody else want to jump in and share?
Yeah.
Not a specific case, but what I would like to share is what I really like and I really love that I can share that is that we reached some kind of a position that we really celebrate internal transfers and share this success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that this is already really more or less embedded. I would lie if I say to 100% and everywhere, but I would say mainly that people are really proud if they developed someone who is then successful outside of the role where they started their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I think that allows people to feel more comfortable. It's a norm here in the company to make moves.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So people are often a little nervous and scared, I find. So yeah, no, that sounds great. Anybody else have any success stories?
I was just going to say we're fortunate to be a global company with some sister companies with lots of lateral opportunities as well as upward mobility. But one thing that we saw work well is kind of a try it before you buy it sort of position where allowing someone 60-day period, 30 to 60-day period to try out, particularly if it was a different department. So their skill set on paper seemed like it would transfer, but really having the opportunity to try out, another department, another role before they permanently committed to it as a way to introduce them to a new role and allow them movement. And we've seen that work quite successfully.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Linda. Anyone else want to share? Okay. Nate?
Sure. I think looking at the comments, Rita made a good point in that lateral ability, because not everyone, I think all too often we get stuck in the vertical trajectory and just getting, I think, too silo focused on that, but creating those lateral opportunities and having that exposure. But sometimes people just want to really get good at what they do. They may not want to move to another function. How do you not lose sight of those individuals as well, so that we're not creating that feeling that, well, if I don't want to move up, then I'm losing my importance. That's not the case. Some people just want to get really good at what they do. So making sure that we're not losing sight of that as well. I think everyone else hit on great topics.
Yeah, I think it's important to focus on development and not like promotions, right? So if you focus on development, hopefully a side effect is promotion or job change or whatever, right? But what companies get wrong, I think, is they try and focus on promotions and then hope that development is the side effect. And that's kind of going about it the wrong way. Because also you don't want to set employees up to fail, which is like sometimes you tell them this is what you need to do to get to the next role. And then they do all those things, but then the next role isn't available. And they're like, what the hell? Right? So you don't want to set it up that way. You want to set it up with them, the expectation, this is development focused, right? And if you do all of these things, then when the role opens up, then you can move into it, right? So I think it's really important on how you frame it, right? It's more on development and getting stronger, and then the side effect of that is when a role opens up, you can move into it versus, okay, I'm going to go for this role. Yeah, I'm going to develop, but really I'm just going for the role, and I want the role, and once I'm ready for it, I need this role, and if I don't have it, I'm going to go look for another job. Like, you don't want that to kind of be the mindset. So, and it's a very small thing. It's all just in kind of how you frame it, but it's a very important detail that I've seen companies miss out on.
Well said. I appreciate those points. All right, folks. Well, we're going to wrap up the session today. Thank you all for being here. I love the conversation. And the next one in line is talent planning in resource constrained environments. Should be a hot topic starting in the next couple of minutes. So stay tuned and we'll see you all very soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice
Bye,
meeting you.
guys. See you later.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next conversation, part of day 2 of the Talent Management and Workforce Strategy Summit. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co-host for the next 40 minutes, and I will ask Jessa to help me bring all our wonderful speakers on stage, just trying to make the most out of the 40 minutes we have ahead of us that will just fly by in a second. And while everybody is popping up and getting comfortable in their Zoom bubbles, I will say thank you to everybody in the audience, whether you just joined or you rolled over from the previous conversation. Thank you for being here. Please keep the comments coming and use the chat generously. First and foremost, consider this conversation just as much yours as it is our speakers. Whatever it is that we are discussing, please make sure that you drop in your comments your own stories, your own takes on the topic. That is such a wonderful way to support this community, and we can all learn from each other. One thing that I've learned doing this Hacking HR facilitation work is that there are always so many geographical, industry, cultural nuances to any topic that some of us might never come across them in our day-to-day work. Now, enough of my blabathon, and let's get the fun started. So today is about talent planning in resource-constrained environments. What I will do, you know the drill, I will pass the e-mic around clockwise as you appear on my screen. And I will ask you to first introduce yourselves very shortly, give us a few highlights. And I remember I read the title and I was very tempted to say, yeah, resource-constrained environments, pretty self-explanatory. But what I learn every day through my change work is that most of the time, the self-explanatory things come back to bite you. So I am very curious, when you think of resource-constrained environments, how do you define them for the purpose of our conversation today? And maybe what are some of the constraints you have seen emerging over the past period? So, short introduction, and what do you mean by resource-constrained environments? And Kristin, it's so great to see you on my screen. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristin Strunk, and I am a Global Director of People and Culture here at Manpower Group in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And my history in HR has covered everything from business partner to learning and development to organizational development and change. And so when I think about this concept of resource constraint, my head immediately goes to dollars, right? We don't have the dollars to invest. But when you just asked that question, where my mind went was time, energy, interest, right? And organizations are talking about transformation on a constant basis. Do our people have the time and energy for development? We all say we want it, but do they have the space for it in their schedules? So that was really what came up for me when you asked that question in a different way.
Thank you so very much. Mariano, good to see you. Welcome into our fun house for today.
Thank you. I'm dialing in from Spain. I'm currently the CHRO for Wealth Connell. It's a fintech British firm. I started in the HR thing almost 25 years ago. Time flies. So I've been in the automotive industry. I also worked in the investment banking M&A industry for a few years, and now I'm in the techiest side of things, so to speak. So back to the point, and I agree with Christine. It's about the euros, the GBP in my case, but it's about not having the resources to grow and to help the business grow as you expected, as you planned to do. You need to prioritize other things, and you need to enter into this economy mode where you need to be very, very careful of what you do, how you do it, and you need to start looking into the inside. So that's let's start with that, and then let's move on with the next guest, because there's a lot of stuff to cover here today.
Thank you so very much. And I know that this has the great potential of being a Starbucks moment. And I might be mispronouncing your name terribly, but I know the struggle is real. So is it Ewan?
Ewan, yes. So nice to meet you, Ewan. Thank you for having me here today. I'm a HR leader. I'm based in Canada. I've been working in the industry, many different industries for about 15 years, both as a leader, as a consultant, and with executives directly. Recently it's been more focused on the not-for-profit space, and prior to that, tech and tech startups specifically. So I'm very familiar in working with resource-constrained environments when it does come to dollars and cents. One of the focuses definitely when you're working at a not-for-profit is dollars and cents. And when I think of resources, that's often what it comes down to, because the money that we use, the money that we spend is money that is donated. And it's very important that we have that top of mind when we're making any decisions about resourcing, about planning, and about talent. So just making sure that we're really optimizing.
Thank you. Anselm, so lovely to have you with us for this conversation. And can you please just make sure that you unmute yourself? The struggle is real?
The struggle is indeed real. Yes, I come with 16 years plus experience in human resources. Most of my experience have been in the non-profit sectors. I have just about 20% in the profit sector. I am currently based in Abuja, overseeing human resource activities for the West and Central Africa region for Evidence Action. I agree with the restraint being in terms of dollar cent, for me, Naira and CFA. But addition, in my sector, what is actually one of the constraints is also finding the right talent, which is something that Ewan has pointed to. We could sometimes get the dollars, we can have all we need, the tools, but finding the right person sometimes is one challenge. And so basically for me, beyond the dollars, beyond the pounds, beyond the Nairas, beyond all the euros, finding the right talents is also a resource constraint understanding that I actually had when I was coming in for this as well.
Thank you. And Preet, you're making our panel complete. Good to see you.
Yay. Hi, good to see you too. And yes, my name is Preet Paul. I am the head of HR in a fintech company. My experience been mainly in the tech industry. I'm based here in California. And for me, I think what everybody said makes total sense. It's the resources, it's the dollar, it's the skill set. But another thing, being in the tech startups I have seen, it's the time constraint is also a big thing. Because in startups, we are always looking for getting lots of things done in a small time. So sometimes having that time to deliver everything and do everything can be a big, big constraint when people are doing 2 or 3 jobs, working 15, 16 hours already, and they are like at their tail end of like, okay, exhausted and all that. So that can be another big thing too. How do we deliver what we need to deliver with less resources can be very, very big struggle with time and what we have on the plan.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very much. A lot of mental post-it notes from this round alone, and I will come to collect them. And I was listening to your answers just now, and I was very tempted, to dive into the technicalities and, your tips and tricks. But then I thought, before we go into any talent planning, what is the work that we need to do to understand the constraints, to understand the stakeholder expectations, especially to bring them to surface? Because a lot of expectations are kind of assumed, embedded, but never really clarified most of the times. And Mariano, there was something that you said in your introduction, and I hope I got it correctly and my memory is not playing tricks on me. You said the importance of going within, going inside. So I would invite you to be the pioneer for this round. What do we do before we start any planning? And then everybody, please, the unmuting competition will be officially open. Just pop in and build your own flow. So Mariano, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was referring to is that in reality, when you need to start looking inside, most of the pipeline is already in-house, inside your own walls, not outside, especially when there's a time of constraint, when budgets are tight, you don't have the dollars, you don't have the GBP, building big external pipelines, searching the market, mapping, doing this market mapping exercise is futile. It's almost irrational because you're not going to hire. So when it's the time for austerity, the strategic play is to double down on your internal talent. And it doesn't matter how big or small the company you work for is. In my experience, I've been through years of extreme constraint. The strategic moves didn't come from new roles. They came from reallocation of the talent we already had, moving people cross-functionally from one department to the other, especially when someone has a genuine interest and the business has a real need. It's not a theoretical mobility slide. It's just something real happening. And in times of constraint, you also embrace the multiple hat thing when it's safe and appropriate. Especially, I work in financial services, so regulatory perspective is important. So, and also you need to define the critical roles, the role criticality. It's whether, in my case, whether it's a approved function, regulated function that needs to be approved by the regulator. So yeah, it's a mixture of everything, but that's what I meant about looking inside.
Of course, I was muted when I was wondering who will be the quickest to unmute themselves. So, Christine, please.
Yes, and I think to build exactly on that concept, I think there were some great insights there around the speed at which we can analyze the external labor market and the changes that are happening in the external labor market and the uncertainty that is there. And all of these other things really make that external analysis not really practical. It's not necessarily a great use of time. And I think when we do have the time to focus, I agree, we do need to be aligning and focusing on our internal talent. And we do need to be able to be very open with what we're going to need moving forward. We have to feel comfortable talking to our employees around how they're going to need to evolve, what the new expectations might look like. Preparing them as far in advance as we can will help them work to develop maybe their own skills, will help them understand why things are changing, which will help them evolve with us. But if we do that in a black box, or we do that in secret meetings about our talent, and we do it in our secret succession planning meetings and all of those kinds of things, we keep the entire organization in the dark. And that doesn't allow them to come on the journey with us as we move forward.
I think just to add on to that is looking at the talent bench strength as well, right? Getting more deeper on that to understand what is our capability and what is our capacity, based on the bench strength that we have. That can also be very, very useful when we have these kind of constraints, like what kind of talent do we really have deliverables done. So that's another thing we can go deeper.
Thank you. Ewan, I saw you unmuted there, and then Anselm, we will wrap it up with you. Ewan.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I was just going to lean in as well to sort of what Kristen shared around making sure that there's really clear organizational priorities that are being communicated down, up, all around the organization so that people understand the why for the change, and it gives them an opportunity to also buy in. I find oftentimes the most effective way to manage these times when you're in resource constraint is encouraging people to think beyond what their existing roles are and encouraging them to really also come to the table with solutions. I found this especially relevant working in tech startup spaces. Preet, I'm sure you're very familiar with this, where you have very honest conversations with your group, and you also have great access to your C-suite from all levels, and it's easy to get, or much easier to get, buy-in for trying new things and testing and learning new strategies when it comes to how you can stretch and also how you can evolve your existing roles. Titles are titles, and I also think it's about the competencies and the skills, similar to what Mariano mentioned. It's what skills and competencies are existing in the organization.
Thank you. Anselm.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also to what has been said, is that we also need to get to the point where we also start thinking decolonization, because what usually happens is the creativity that was talked about, looking inward, but we can look inward as well as forget sometimes that we have structures that can also hold us behind. Like the tech industry is one industry I like most. They always try to just do things newly. And so if we, in resource constrained environment, we have to think, okay, why are we doing this? Is it because it's said as best practice? If it's best practice, is it best practice for our own context? So contextual intelligence is very important. Decolonizing practices and processes. Do we have to do things because headquarters said so? Is that what we have here? So those are things we also need to take into practice as well, because usually I've found out that constrained moments actually bring a lot of creativity if we decide to just think outside the structure or the colonized structure that's been given to us. Just that.
Thank you all. I was reminded, since all of you mentioned the constraints of, budgets and talent availability and headcount, I was reminded of a piece of research I recently read. I believe it came from McKinsey, about 5 practices to help companies navigate disruptions brought on by AI. And the number 1 practice was prioritize talent investment as much as you prioritize financial investments. And there was a case study of a company who had the financial power to open 5 new factories, but looking at the talent availability, they only went for 2, because opening up more would have exposed them to really risky talent shortages and talent challenges. So I would really love to spend a few minutes and explore how is the relationship with finance as a stakeholder in talent planning in resource-constrained environments. And Anselm, I know you just came out of the hot seat of going last, but I would invite you to lead us into this slice of today.
Quite interesting is that finance thinks in terms of numbers, and we in human resources things in terms of potential. So what needs to happen here and what usually happens is that because finance thinks profit and loss, and we think continuity and as well as impact. So the best way for us to deal with that, usually in discussing with finance, my thought is usually happen is that finance, okay, what we are going to do is going to lead, and we try to speak their language. That would be the first thing. Instead of saying that we are going to conduct training, we will tell finance that we are going to do this activity. It's a training, but it's going to lead to continuity in ABC, or it's going to lead to us having ABC, which also is going to involve you. So the first thing is translating our expectations using the logic of the finance people. Use profits and loss, and then translate it into how it actually contextualizes with people, human resources. The second thing is also remind finance that there may be finance in terms of number or in terms of the guys that handle the money part of it, but there are also human resources. And so if it affects the other person, it's going to affect them as well. So that has always helped in many ways. But another way is also that I've realized that finance, whenever you actually bring finance on board before the initiative becomes open to other persons, they seem to give you the necessary advice, the necessary tools, and the necessary assistance. So yes, that collaboration is key for HR and finance.
Thank you. I see people are looking for the unmute button. Christine, thank you.
I think that absolutely, and I love these panels because I get to start every sentence with "I absolutely agree," but I do absolutely agree. And as HR professionals, if our number one partner isn't finance, we don't make traction. If we don't know how to make a business case, if we don't know what drives our profit and loss, if we don't know what's happening with our customers, we will not get anywhere, and we will be seen as the fun committee, and we'll be doing the things that are important for the organization to do, but also don't necessarily drive that level of involvement and leadership and strategy. And so having finance partner with us is, if I could help young HR people in their career understand anything, it would be learn who your finance people are, learn how to talk their talk, and learn what they're looking for. Because those conversations, when we're in a resource-constrained environment, become extremely, extremely important.
Preet.
Yes, I have something to add here too. For me, being in startups and working very, very closely with the CEOs and CFOs, I always start with this, that this is a holy trinity: CEO, CPO, CFO. If three of us are not aligned, then forget it. We are not going to be able to run the business and take it to profitability. And I think what everybody said is really, really great. It's all about connecting the HR initiatives to either productivity or showcase how it's going to increase the cost. And that's the language finance CFOs understand and get aligned on very, very quickly. So I am delivering on something, on creating some initiative. I align with the CEO first to make sure we are thinking on the same path, but right away it's with the CFO to showcase how it's going to either increase the productivity or revenue or going to save us cost. And that's where the magic happens and the needle.
Anything to add, Mariano or Ewan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said. As HR partner, we are partners to the other functions, right? So the thing that I've found during these years of being an HR professional is that you need to find the way to link the business outcomes to the HR outcomes, to find the line. That's how you can help the business. You need to understand the business logic. You need to be there. You need to be liaising with the CFO, with the CEO. As Preet said, it's super important, especially in a small environment and small firm, that these three people are aligned and in the same page. So it's all about being an effective business partner. It is about getting to keep the seat that Dave Ulrich got for all of us. He was the guy that introduced the business partner model, and that's what we are. We are a business partner. We need to be an effective partner to the business.
Agree. And I would just say that the partnership with finance, in my experience, is, just learn the language they speak and quantify what human metrics mean when it comes to finance. Here is the cost of attrition. Here is the cost of new hire. Here is the cost of going through the talent lifecycle, upskilling versus sourcing new talent. So just being very aware of those costs and try to quantify it as much as you can. I think one of the great things about technology that's coming into play nowadays is really the access to data and better access to benchmarking, honestly. So you're able to really pull in information and build smarter business cases. So to Kristen's point, we're not the party planning committee. We're not just the culture drivers. We are all of that. And we are also so much more when it comes to aligning with the business needs and really partnering really strategically with both the CEO and then also our CFO.
Yeah. I do hear an upgraded version of one classic talent planning question that now sounds buy, borrow, build, or bought. And I do hear it quite often. Now, I hope that we can reserve a bit of time to discuss AI when it comes to talent planning in resource-constrained environments. But before that, I do want to go back and pick up on the topic of transparency, and especially transparent communication. So my next question, as we are in the second half of our time together, is how can leaders, and especially HR leaders, communicate transparently about the resources, the resource constraints, in such a way that trust and engagement are not impacted negatively? Even more so, since I saw a lot of energy in your answers, but also in the comments on how internal pools of candidates are critical in such conditions. And I was thinking maybe, Kristen, you can lead us into this. How can we communicate transparently?
So I think it's a great question, and I think there's the opportunity for us when we think about talent pools or talent networks. It is really about who are the group of people who are maybe swarming a strategic priority right now. We all have cross-functional teams operating in our organizations. So who are the people who are really honed in on a particular problem to solve, not title to have? And as we think about building those talent networks or those talent pools, when we talk in terms of our HR processes, are we rewarding teams for the work that they're doing on specific problems or specific priorities, or are we rewarding individuals? Are we looking at the greatest number of people for succession planning purposes or contingent or continuation planning purposes, continuity, that's the word I was looking for, continuity purposes? Or are we trying to get as many people as we can who have possibility to move or take broader roles and responsibilities? And so those talent networks can look really different depending on how your organization is operating. In a startup, for example, it might just be who can hit fast and furious and execute. In a larger, slower moving organization, it might be who can work the politics of an international organization that doesn't have a ton of boundaries or a ton of structure, right? So each of those needs will be different.
Anyone wants to build on this?
On the concept of transparency in a constrained environment, what I found out is that employees can handle reality. What they don't like is ambiguity, keeping things from them. If you explain the business logic, first and foremost, what's not going to change, that can be used as the foundation to implement any ulterior change. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
I have once been made redundant, and I didn't like the process. Why? Because I felt that the what was explained to me, but there was no empathy. Because sometimes we forget that people have, beside the fact that they've built a relationship with the organization, with people, and so letting them go, and making them feel that we also share their pain. We also are making a lot of things to see the process. So empathy is very important. Otherwise, explaining the what can just be like a press release. So what I probably will add is that that communication, that transparency, we need to add also empathy to it, and then ensure that we make the employee realize that, hey, you still have people you are leaving behind, and let's keep in touch. And if anything comes up, ABC, or if you need any help, ABC. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Yeah,
And I want to
such
just
a great call out. Preet, please. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Just one comment on top of what Mariano said. Yes, employees are very, very capable of handling the hard news and all that, but it comes with a very, very fine balance of it, the why behind it, and then giving them a sense of hope is very, very important, because we can't just go out and say, this is the condition of the company and this is what we are facing, but how we're going to solve for it and what we need from the employee base, and creating that sense of community and a sense of we are all in this together to help, and we can get to this North Star. All we need to do is these pivots and shifts. I think having that clarity in the why and how we're going to do it and showing that light is very, very important in that communication.
Agree completely. I don't have much to add. I would say, just building a little bit more on what Preet said, it's about sort of making sure those goals are really clear and what is the new reality. So what is the company going to look like, and build trust with the planning that you're doing beyond the immediacy of that sort of, whether it's a RIF, whether it's a downsizing, or whether it's just an acknowledgement of the amount of work that is currently being created. In startups and scale-ups, oftentimes you're outpaced by the growth, so it's a challenge. So I would say, really, this is when you partner with your communications team and making sure that you're working really strategically to keep everyone in the fold and in the loop about these challenges, and making sure that you're celebrating those small wins when it comes to different benchmarks that the company is striving for, whether it's a EBITDA neutrality or making moves towards that, or just different metrics that we can look at and work towards as a group.
There's a wonderful survey by Gallup. They started this piece of work back in 2004, and they iteratively expanded it geographically in statistical relevance, and it's one of their leadership reports, but they call it What Followers Want. And the last version came out, I think, late last year or very early this year. And there are 4 fundamental needs of the followers. The second is trust. The third is compassion. The fourth is stability, but defined as need for psychological safety and strong foundations during time of uncertainty, not for things to stay the same. So, second, trust. Third, compassion. Fourth, stability. Do you know what the first one is? It was mentioned during the last few minutes. This is why it popped up in my mind.
Transparency.
Hope. The first one is hope, and it's defined as the need to feel positive about the future and to have a sense of direction. It doesn't say clarity, but I love the fact that hope makes a comeback in the business language, because we used reasons to believe and mission and vision and more concrete things. But I think hope speaks to something so profoundly human that we cannot get the same through any other, not even synonyms, right? So I just wanted to say that the 4 fundamental needs of the followers are hope, trust, compassion, and stability, in this exact order and in this exact order across geographies. But I would really love to use, excuse me, the remaining minutes, AI Festival. So whatever you want to highlight when it comes to AI on this topic, we can use all the remaining 6 minutes, which I know is not nearly enough, but just what would you like to highlight from your perspective when it comes to AI for tenant planning in resource-constrained environments? And E-mic on the table, we do this popcorn style.
I'll go.
You go first, Prit?
No.
Okay,
Go
let's
ahead,
go Prit and then Mariano. Prit and Mariano.
Okay. I think AI is not going anywhere. Like the internet is there, air is there, AI is going to be there. So that's the new reality. We all have to adapt. We all have to get on that train. And I think when there are resource constraints, AI can be a very, very big tool to help us with that, because whenever there are resource constraints, everything becomes very, very stressful. There is a lot more work with limited resources, because work is not going anywhere. It's actually increasing, but resources are little. And then if you add these AI tools, you can leverage that to fill that gap, bridge that gap, and avoid that burnout. I really think it can be really grateful. The only caveat is how we do an ethical use of it and not take the human element out of it while we are incorporating it in our different tools and practices. That's my take on this.
Thank you. Mariano.
Yep.
Prit, you just beat me to it. I mean, I was going to say something very similar. You know, for me, AI is a powerful tool, probably the most powerful tool that I ever used. It's great at organizing things, structuring things for you, but cannot replace the human element, cannot be the decision maker. It's just a tool, and it needs to keep being a tool. That's what it is. But it saves a lot of time, a lot of effort. Again, structuring things, organizing stuff, and it's a game changer. It is, but it's just a tool.
Yeah.
And I might say something a little bit less formal around the use of AI when it comes to this talent planning in a resource-constrained environment. I would use it to challenge myself as an HR leader in how I'm thinking. I've been doing this about 25 years, and I don't want to continue to come to my business with the same solutions and the same suggestions, which involve, you know, hey, just give them another assignment and tell them how it's going to develop them, but don't give them, you know, the other things that go with it. I think we have to challenge ourselves, and I would use AI to prompt me for the craziest ideas that it could come up with for either org design or development ideas or things like that, where I know I can be stuck in the things that I've done for the past 25 years. So I need a partner to challenge me to get me out of my rut.
Mine would be that it's a tool, like it's been said, the pitfall, aside with the pitfall with that is that if someone is not like Christine, who is looking to be challenged, the person might just put in some garbage in, and then the person will get the garbage back. So in that case, what that means is that the flaws that we have in our practice will still be built upon. And then we'll be having vanity metrics. But if the person who is behind, given the prompt, it's very intelligent enough and is problem-driven, that person is going to get the best of AI, where even the very system we are building is going to collapse for a new structure. So that's the challenge for us in human resources will be to start advocating people on really how to build up their prompt, how to give their prompt, so that we'll be able to have not garbage, but something that could challenge us, that could help us to either remove the structure that we have and have new structure human resources. That is going to help a lot. So that would be my addition to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, great point. And I think when it comes to AI in the environments that I've been in, I believe and I see it really effectively applied when it's applied with a framework. So everyone understands that it's an enhancement. Everyone understands the why behind integrating this tool, and then using that to help come up with new creative ways, the same way that Kristen would, to challenge thinking, to challenge internal process, and to challenge these new ways of working. I think, yes, it is a tool. It's a really powerful tool, and it's something that is going to be around for a long time. There is a lot of fear when I talk to people about using it and understanding how to use it. So I think the best way to sort of move beyond that fear is really leaning in and testing and learning and creating space for failure when it comes to testing and playing with AI in the context of work. It's a really wonderful technology, and I've already seen enhancements when it comes to being able to use it to eliminate process and eliminate steps in our workflow. But we still need to have that critical editing eye, because that is what we bring to the table as humans. It's that critical thought and that way of connecting dots when there isn't data available or accessible for others to sort of lean on or AI to pull on. So important to have that understanding that it is a tool.
Thank you all so very much. It's so painful to say that our time just flew by, and it's time to say goodbye and hope to see everybody soon again. As a wrap up, I do want to read a comment in our chat, and I am so sorry that I can only see LinkedIn user in my comment section, but I think it's such a powerful call out to wrap up our conversation with. As someone who's been the go-to for cross-functional work, please build guardrails. High performers get overloaded fast when they're tapped for everything. Recognition and boundaries matter. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you to everybody in the audience. Thank you to Sneha and Jessa and everybody who puts in all the invisible work that makes everything possible for our panels to happen. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and I hope I will get to share many more conversations with all of you in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Maybe we just introduce ourselves.
Yes.
Fantastic. Samira, I think you were here first. How about you kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Samira. I'm dialing in from Johannesburg, South Africa. I am the managing director and founder of a company called Pinnacle HR Consulting. We are a strategic advisory firm that helps organizations across Africa and Asia Pacific region build systems that actually work. My background is in strategy and transformation. and also a Gallup certified strengths coach, which simply means I spend my days helping leaders and teams uncover what's right with them and use that to drive performance. Over the last 15 years, I've partnered with executives and founders and HR leaders to turn HR from an admin function into a strategic engine for growth, one that connects culture, leadership, and business performance. And so at the very heart of my work is a simple belief: when people grow, businesses grow. And when we get that right, everything else starts to move in the right direction too.
Good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelique Hamilton. I'm the founder and the CEO of the HR Chic Group. We're a human resources and culture consultancy supporting the small business and startup. And so I've been in human resources over 30 years, supporting all sizes from nonprofit, social enterprise, finance, you have it. But what's important for me to be a part of this summit today is really focus on the small businesses that are really hurting right now.
Fantastic. Thank you. And my name is Avery Coleman. I am a member of the internal HR team at Pebble, serving as the Senior Director of People Experience, which is a unified approach we take to supporting our team members, inclusive of people operations, employee success, and our people experience partners, which is our version of HRBPs. And at Pebble, formerly known as Velocity Global, we are a global employer of record. We help companies navigate the financial and administrative challenges of the global employment landscape and helping them to do so in a compliant manner. Pleased to be here with you all talking about building talent infrastructures for SMBs.
Yeah.
And good morning. I am your a little bit late host and moderator, Lauren Lefkowitz. My company is Fine as a Trap, and I do fractional HR services for small businesses up to 100 employees and executive coaching for individuals and companies. And we're having a little windstorm here, and my internet went out just as we were doing the countdown. So welcome in, everybody. Thank you for taking the lead on introducing yourselves, and thanks to Danielle for popping in. Yesterday, I bragged about always showing up as moderator, as Danielle was waiting in the background in case of a no-show. And then today, here we are. What would it be if it was perfect? Boring, right? So panelists, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about this conversation because I think that we tend to, in webinars and summits, we tend to focus on the big global kind of look at things, and it can be hard to scale that to small and medium businesses. So I'm really excited to talk today about how you build that talent infrastructure for small and medium businesses. And I'd love to start by hearing, if you're starting from the start, you're a small business, you're ready for some growth, maybe you hired some friends at the beginning, right? Or your sister's kid or whatever it was. And now you're really ready to start being strategic and up-level how you hire. What is it that you start with? And just hop off of mute whenever you're ready to answer. We'll all get to pitch in.
Yeah, I would say that you start with the foundation. What I'm finding with small businesses is all about, let's get the marketing, let's get the branding, let's get the sales and the revenue, but you're not talking or focusing on the infrastructure, which is a foundation, your people system. So it starts with that ground level work first. What are you trying to develop in terms of your team, whether it's a team of 1, a team of 10, or a team of 100. So what are you trying to do? Well, what type of roles are you trying to create? Defining those roles early on before you get really scaled up when it's a little bit too late, because at that point you're trying to play catch up. So being very intentional about your workplace, how you're trying to focus on the workplace at hand, really focus in on your core team, on what you really need to scale and also build a solid business. Because again, with you having that core structure, those individuals are your ambassadors for the business. So they need to know as much knowledge as possible. So how will you expand the knowledge, expertise, sharing that as a collective with your group? And also just focusing on, it's just not about paperwork. It's just not about getting that first hire, which is important, but essentially building a solid foundation of a people organization from the first. So You need HR at the start and not at the latter portion as you're building.
I agree completely with Angelique. I think for me, the first step isn't about HR policy. It's really about clarity. So it's creating that one-page people operating model. Who we are, what does success look like? How do we hire? How do we onboard? How do we manage? And how do we reward? I think that clarity gives founders that freedom. It gives teams alignment. It gives business scalability. And businesses that build that consistent operating rhythm of conversations, reviews, and reflections early on create the clarity and accountability that sustains growth over time. And businesses that adopt even a simple 90-day check-in cycle, those are the ones that don't just survive the market shocks, they grow through them. So for me, clarity before complexity, that is the real infrastructure.
And I really appreciate what Angelique and Samira have shared. And if I can piggyback on that, ultimately, when it comes to building that talent infrastructure, you want to make sure that you do it early to prevent the chaos that ultimately ensues as you start to grow and scale. And want to make sure that the HR infrastructure that you're building begins with clarity before complexity. We want to make sure that role definitions are clearly are articulated at the outset. We want to be consistent in our hiring processes, and we want to make sure that ultimately we're doing that compliantly. At Pebble, that is part of our mantra, part of what we offer as the value proposition to our customers is we allow you to employ individuals globally and do so incredibly compliantly. And you want to make sure that it's not all about software, what ATS do you go for, things of that sort. You want to make sure that you're clearly aligned on your philosophy. How do we grow? How do we hire? And how do we reward those that are coming on board? As we want to make sure that it's all for, the talent acquisition process is not all for naught. That we can make sure that we retain that talent that we're bringing on board. We recently released a global hiring report, and part of what was noted there was, companies reported that when they had these fundamentals in place before they hit 50 employees, they were able to reduce their turnover by 34%. So again, ensuring that you have this infrastructure, starting small, stacking wins, and building something consistent can enable most organizations to meet that early demand for talent and begin to find their sea legs as they continue to grow.
When we think about growing and we think about this sort of founder level to the, if a medium company sort of ends at 300 to 500 people, there's a point at which it feels too early to bring in HR. And there's a point at which there's an realization that we should have brought in HR at some point. So in your experience, where have you seen the most success in bringing in that strategic HR support to build that infrastructure?
I would say at the very beginning, I feel like, HR is a strategic component of your business and not just a tactical component of the business. We're often viewed as that. And so it's like, we can start this business, with 10, 12 employees. We can add HR to anyone else on the team. Someone, who may not have the skill set or may not have the capacity, maybe already overworked or overextended in what they're doing. So it's important to actually include HR as a part of your overall strategy as you're building your business. It's so important. Without you having that loop, there's so many different things that, fall by the wayside without having HR as your true partner in helping you really expand the presence of your business and also helping you to get to that next level where you need to be in terms of scope of your business.
100%. I think HR roles or the role of HR really becomes critical when growth starts to outpace the structure, not when things break. So when the founder becomes the bottleneck, HR helps to turn ad hoc decisions into repeatable systems, defining roles, onboarding, and basic performance clarity. When that growth starts to create confusion, and as teams expand, HR builds in that structure, job families, reporting lines, HR tools, and creates clear accountability. And when decisions lack data, HR introduces basic people analytics to link headcount, turnover, engagement back to business performance. So the goal is to build clarity, capability, and culture early so that growth doesn't outgrow the people systems holding it together.
And it's really a mindset change that has to take place on two levels. I think the first one, and we will all agree with this here, is that we need to regard HR as a growth engine. We are not a cost center. We are very much a force multiplier. And when we can wrap our minds around the idea that HR is a contributing factor to the success we wish to have as an organization, that change of perspective often involves HR in these critical conversations far earlier than we otherwise think that HR is being brought in. So the idea that we can be regarded as a contributor to what it is that we're building often is the impetus for us being brought in earlier to those conversations. And we know that organizations that measure HR's impact beyond just the compliance stuff that we do often find themselves to be far more profitable as they are having more engaged and more broader reaching conversations about how HR can ultimately impact the business positively. I think there's also a mindset shift that has to take place with the founder as well. That goes from being the doer of everything into designing the processes that allow for others to be successful. So when that founder or that executive leader then takes the mindset of, if I delegate this to my HR team, that frees me up to focus on more high value tasks that I can allow HR to handle. And when we're able to be, again, early contributors to those conversations, and we are given leadership opportunities to lead in some of those activities, ultimately we find that those organizations are better off for doing so, specifically when it comes to a key function such as talent acquisition.
Avery, you so gracefully just led us into our next question, which you started to touch on in terms of mindset shifts. If HR is part of the foundation of building this talent structure, of building the organization, of building the culture, and also, Angelique, you said we're sometimes seen as a cost center, and I would elevate that to say we are most of the time seen as a cost center, right? I was brought up in my HR career, and I think many of us were, as a cost center is revenue loss prevention, but not revenue increase. So if we're seen that way, and we have these founders who are, combining 6 positions into one because this one person's good at stuff, if we're seen as this cost center and we're coming in to build the talent structure, what can we do and what kinds of things can we specifically make measurable so that our value shows right from the start?
Lauren, if I may, and it's just to piggyback off what Avery started earlier, I think for me, the shift starts when we stop talking about HR in terms of compliance and start talking about HR in terms of capability and cash flow. For small businesses, every hire, every mistake, and every resignation hits the bottom line immediately. So people are financial decisions. The mindset change happens when founders can see the numbers. Faster onboarding means revenue sooner. Engaged teams mean lower turnover. Clear performance rhythms mean higher productivity. So HR isn't overhead. It's the system that protects time, talent, and trust. And if we practically link every HR initiative to a commercial metric, so for example, recruitment, if we link that to time to revenue, learning to performance uplift, or culture to retention cost saved, then when people's strategy starts showing up in the financial dashboard, it earns its place in the boardroom, and HR stops being a cost because it starts driving capability, because capability is essentially what's driving growth, innovation, and resilience.
And I would agree with that. I really, when I think about HR, because we are viewed as this cost center, and we've heard that throughout all of our careers, But we are the catalyst for performance. If it's not because of HR, because we're actually measuring, we're actually capturing all of the analytics on how we have the added value to the incoming cash flow, how we can optimize the profitability of the organization through talent. And a great culture is one that's built not only with exceptional performance, but as a part of the HR component, exceptional behaviors. So we do play a huge part in transforming and informing how the way or the shape of the culture should be for that small business, and to help that owner, that CEO or founder really lead with excellence in trying to build a great product or service.
And I would also say, in some respects, as HR professionals, we also need to advocate for ourselves and why we should be key contributors into any of the business discussions that we're having. More often than not, the easiest way for us to do that, Lauren, as you mentioned, is to start offering the measurable success metrics to help folks visualize the contributions that HR makes to the business itself. So when we're able to introduce these people metrics in sort of business terms, I think it helps others to see what it is that we do actually contribute to the business. So whether it's we're looking at the cost of a particular vacancy, if we're looking at productivity per hire, if we're looking at the internal mobility rate, I think these are all great things to infuse into what is our HR game that helps others to understand the value that we lend to the business as well. Lauren, I would also offer, you mentioned earlier, HR being regarded as revenue protection. I think there's also there's a positive aspect to that as well. Any time that we're able to avoid regrettable attrition, anytime that we're able to bring on a key hire, that is all future revenue that's saved. So anytime that we're able to categorize this up to the business, up to these business unit leaders, to help them understand why we should be key contributors to those conversations, I think that advocacy bodes well for ourselves and ultimately ends up being a boon to our respective organizations. Excuse me.
Thank you. If you're not paying attention to the chat, by the way, and you're watching us, the chat is active. There's some great comments in there. There's great interactivity. So keep in mind, HR friends, if you're here and learning and building your network, these people in the comments and we on the panel are people for you to connect with, so we can all learn from each other. I think HR often isolates ourselves and we become very insular in our own systems. So this is your community. Just a little reminder about that. Let's talk about the messy middle, which is like everything always, right? I have never in my 25 years in HR run into a situation where I have walked into a business and they've said, oh, everything's in order, just maintain. That's not real life. So we're always in the messy middle, but in the small and medium business space, we tend to run into this messy middle that's even like pre-middle. I've walked into so many situations where I've seen this emoji be the answer from what would you like me to focus on? And so when we hit that messy middle, when you as an HR professional walk into a business or an organization or nonprofit that is like, they just don't even know what they don't know, where do you start in your own strategy, in your own relationship building, in your own systems to begin to get to the point where you can build that talent infrastructure?
I know it's kind of textbook, but anytime I enter any organization, I always audit to what they're doing, through an actual SWOT to see what are some of the things that are really working that I don't need to tweak. Because I do find that small business leaders often want you to tweak things that are working. I mean, we can optimize those systems, but there's not a need to change or revamp them. But I look at some of the things that's working and what's not. If there is an issue, let's just say with churn in terms of turnover, is there an issue that's with the operations perhaps it's leadership, just trying to look at a lens to see what are some of those problems that we can identify very readily to really help that leader to retain staff and really improve the performance of said team. If there's an area where there is a, increase in benefits costs, what has been the historical I guess, philosophy on how they actually model or actually really look at benefits and total rewards for their organization. So I just do it really textbook, the ABCs of HR start it from the bottom, because that's where we are, and look at what has been done, what can be done, and what are some enhancements and improvements that we can do in order to really add value from an HR focus. Because I think when we come in, it's like a magic wand. HR is here. We're here to save the day. We have a cape. We're going to make everything well. And that's not always the case. It's not always true. There are steps and there are stages that we need to go through to really create a great model for that organization so that they can really optimize their effectiveness as a company.
I agree completely. I think starting with that SWOT analysis is so crucial. Often I start by asking what's essential to revenue in the next 90 days and who can help drive it. Because what I find is that in the messy middle is where most startups or small businesses either evolve or they evaporate. And the talent strategy is often the difference. I find that when cash is tight, it's tempting to freeze hiring and cut training, but it's actually the moment where you might need to redeploy and not reduce. So the focus for me has always been remap roles around the priorities that are essential to driving revenue in the next 90 days or the next 180 days, and not just job titles, but value streams. It's also the time to double down on transparency and trust, bring teams into problem solving, because people will commit to what they help to create. And often that messy middle is an opportunity to reset, to simplify, to communicate, to upskill in the skills that matter most right now, whether that's customer experience, whether that's efficiency, whether it's resilience. And I find that particularly in the messy middle, cash flow might be the headline, but capability for me is the plot. So in growth stalls, for me, the messaging is not to shrink the ambition, but to refocus your people, because the businesses that outlast that messy middle are the ones that actually redeploy talent faster than they panic.
And this is all great stuff around the messy middle, and whether I'm coming into a new organization or whether my tenure has been well established, I'm really big on listening tours. I like to take the guesswork out of what I'm responsible for, and really just ask the questions about to find out what's been working, what are our pain points, what are the suggestions that we have about correcting whatever it is that we're being troubled by. As I think that often gets you some of the answers that you're looking for. But ultimately, when we're hitting that messy middle, it's a great time to kind of reevaluate what the org structure looks like. Is the structure that we currently have going to be able to continue to support the business? Is it going to support what we're going to become, as opposed to what we've been? I think it's a great time to really understand that. And ultimately, what comes out of that conversation should be a desire to align all of the existing and the newly introduced roles to outcomes. So let's make sure there are clear success metrics. Let's make sure there are clear ways to measure the business value that's derived from each and every one of these seats. And again, it's through the numbers that we'll have the easiest time understanding what is working, what's not working, and to ultimately help us to pivot so that we can sustain and continue to grow the business.
When we're in growth mode in a small to medium business, we're often moving from, I'm finance, administration, HR, technology, and operations, to, we need a finance person, an HR person, an ops person, a tech person, etc. And by the way, finance and HR should never be the same job. the HR always gets lost. And we are a specialty. So if you're thinking about growth in a small or medium business, and you're thinking about those kinds of roles that get all smashed into one, there's a process of reevaluating. What do jobs look like? What do we look like at 60 employees? What do we look like at 150 employees? What do we look like at 500? When do you start that scaling planning? And what do you do when you hit those touch points where somebody's job is changing, or somebody's jobs are changing, and maybe there are new levels in between? Maybe there are favorite parts of my job that are getting taken away because we need a specific specialty. How do you manage, especially I think the emotional part of that for employees, especially when you want to retain them?
I would say, this is a very difficult subject, especially in today's climate in the workplace. Anytime there's change, there should always be continuous conversation, because we just have to say it. Your work and your job, people are very passionate about the work that they do. So if there's a change, even a slight modification, there's implications on how that will be perceived by the said employee. So I think it's so critical, like as soon as it's time to scale for that next iteration of 10 plus roles or 20 plus roles, that should be a conversation that you're having with your teams. Hey, we've reached this juncture. We've raised X amount of money. It looks like we're going to be expanding by 12 jobs. This is some of the things that we're looking at doing, so that is very transparent. We've mentioned having the transparency because that builds trust. And once you erode the trust, that's where you have an effect on the actual retention. So having that conversation with your employee base so that they know what's going on with the operations, and they're not, surprised when you throw them for a loop and to say, guess what? I am actually merging your finance HR role into operations, and now you're an analyst, and this is not what the person signed up for. And this is where you get the pushback and the dissatisfaction with the employee, as well as the actual disengagement. So for me, I think it's so important to have that conversation, not only with your leadership, your ELT, SLT, whatever executive team that you have, but also your management teams and also your staff members. So everybody is in the loop and they are insured on what's happening in that next stage of your business.
Agree entirely with Angelique. I think for me also, just to add on, is to start by mapping the work and not just the job titles, breaking those roles into core functions. So that's how you'll see which clusters will grow and which will eventually split. By building a skills-based structure, you can start to reconfigure people as those needs evolve, almost like Lego blocks. So if you were to hire generalists who are learning agility who can grow into future specialist roles, even if those jobs don't exist yet, you show people the path. This hybrid role will become X or Y within 12 months. And then you start documenting your processes, tracking your workload and capacity data, and let evidence, not the chaos, tell you when to formalize those roles. I think just to touch on the question around the emotional aspect of it, the reality is the emotional truth, people stay when they see themselves in your future. So even if you can't offer big promotions yet, show them what's coming, how today's hybrid role becomes tomorrow's specialist path. Showing them or creating that vision will create alignment and connectedness to that vision. I also think it's important when we're talking about scalability to recognize stretch, to celebrate growth, and to invest in learning before people ask for it, because scaling isn't just about adding that headcount. And as Angelique just said, it's about building trust. It's about creating that clarity and that sense of belonging as the business gets better.
Fantastic points shared by Angelique and Samira. I don't really have much to add on here, but would love to expand upon the idea that we have to help hiring managers understand about, growth isn't solely about adding headcount. It's much more about planning for capacity and understanding the capabilities of your incumbent team. So if we go through this process of continuous improvement through our talent management exercises, be them our regular performance evaluations, our regular calibration exercises as well, we should have an understanding and an idea of the current capabilities of our teams. We should understand our bench strength from a succession planning standpoint. I think all of those ideas combined can help us get an idea of what it is that we need in terms of planning for the future and what growth actually means. Does it really mean adding additional headcount to our team? Does it mean redeploying the existing talent in other appointments? Or does this functionally mean the opportunity to expand some of the roles that our current team members have and to leverage their expertise, their experience, their skill sets in more varied ways that ultimately allow us to meet all of our business objectives and our goals?
This is such a great discussion, and we are raising flags in the comments here. We've got a couple of comments here on not investing only in the high potentials and calling them high potentials in the first place. We've talked about in the comments not getting rigid, right? Being in that adaptability mode as we are investing in our businesses. Not saying like, oh, we've always done it that way, or my old school, we did it this way, kind of mentalities. So if we're thinking about getting more strategic from the people perspective, the talent perspective, the infrastructure of who works here, if we have folks in our audience who are at the point where it's time to build a real HR budget, set some real HR standards, some KPIs from the HR perspective that support the business, what do you recommend that the business owners and leaders decide to invest in sort of most from a financial perspective, from a strategic perspective, an implementation perspective? What do you recommend that we put the dollars towards as we're maturing?
I would say we put the money in our people. That's what's important. That's what's paramount, that you invest in your people. As I guess we're modeling and changing through technology. The one thing that we can do is focus on building, and I saw in the comments about the agility, is reskilling and upskilling individuals, that so no one gets left out. And what we hear now and today, that so many individuals have not been reskilled or upskilled or learned a new skill so that they can remain a contributor to the organization and really support why they joined that organization to begin with. So I would say invest those dollars not only in the people, but also the resources that they will need in order to do their job effectively and efficiently so that they can add value back to the organization.
Agree entirely. I think globally, the world is moving from role-based to skills-based organizations. 63% of CEOs say that skills shortages are their top threat. I think the World Economic Forum released a report that says that by 2030, 85 million jobs may go unfilled due to lack of skills. So I think if I had to pick on the one thing that businesses would need to invest in, and like Angelique said, it would be investing in people. It's curating ecosystems of skills and purpose, because the future isn't about owning talent, it's about accessing it, growing it, and keeping it connected to your mission. So for small and mid-sized businesses, NGOs, that means a new kind of agility. Recognizing that the world of work has changed and we've got to start looking at ways to blend full-timers, freelancers, alumni, partners into one learning network that can flex as the work evolves. And practically for me, that looks like building a living skills map instead of a static org chart. Creating internal gigs or project pools so people can stretch and contribute across functions. Investing in belonging, not just benefits, because loyalty now follows purpose, not payroll. And I think that the organizations that master this shift, that treat talent as an ecosystem, not as a hierarchy, will be the ones that will stay resilient and innovative, no matter the size of their budget.
Yeah, this is all great stuff. And Lauren, I'm sure when you posed that question to us, you didn't believe we were going to say anything other than investing in your people is number one. So I'm glad that we're all aligned there. But ultimately, when we're thinking about what the investment in our people looks like, I tend to refer back to our employee value proposition. This is the reason why folks come to join us. In part, that may be to continue their career for their professional pursuits. Others, it may be money. For some, it may be rejoining teams that they're familiar with. But whatever that is, obviously, we want to make sure that we pour into it to ensure that the experience that employees come to us for is one that's rich and rewarding. And we certainly want to make sure that the opportunities are available for them to continue to explore their internal mobility while they're there with us. I think another item that I think is really important for us to keep in mind here as we talk about what investment in our people really looks like is ensuring that we're providing them with the three primary things as people leaders we should all provide. That is the tools, resources, and support that they need in order to fulfill their mandate or their responsibilities here with us. Obviously, that looks different for different roles, different positions, but nevertheless, we want to make sure that we're providing robust support across those three elements to ensure that employees feel that they have what they need in order to be successful with us.
Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. You are all a wealth of information, knowledge, and care, and I appreciate that. And I think our audience does as well. That wraps up day 2 of our summit. Come back, go listen to the replays, join the Hacking HR community. We are an incredible community of very generous people, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.